Chapter 1434. Bufang did not conceal his law. In fact, there was no need to do so. He was just too lazy to use it before. However, in the face of the young master who was going all out, Bufang felt a little pressure. This pressure made Bufang feel that he might not be able to defeat his opponent if he did not use his law. Therefore, Bufang activated the law of transmigration in him. This was also the first time Bufang used the law seriously in a fight. Rich runes of the law wheeled over Bufang's head and kept condensing. Soon, they turned into thousands of streams of light that looked like rainbows, dazzling and dazzling. A demigod could comprehend the laws, but they were not complete laws. When one became a god, one could comprehend a perfect law. Everyone knew this. However, the law comprehended in the demigod realm was the foundation. It was the foundation after one became a god. In the demigod realm, if one's foundation was not strong enough, it would easily limit one's achievements after becoming a god. Therefore, the demigod realm was very important. This was also why the crown prince, the young master, and the heirs of the aristocratic families were respected by everyone in the divine dynasty. It was not because of their strength, but because of their potential. Zhao Wuhan's eyes widened. Even when he was in a sorry state, he had never been so frightened. Even when he was pressed to the ground by Bufang, he did not lose heart. He had even made up his mind that after this lesson, he would cultivate harder when he returned to the aristocratic family. At that time, he would come out of seclusion and crush Bufang. He had this confidence because he was the heir of an aristocratic family and had a unique foundation. He had comprehended the top law, the law of devouring. However, at this moment, he saw the law Bufang displayed. He had always thought that Bufang only comprehended an ordinary law. Otherwise, he would not have displayed it. However, when he saw Bufang's law, he was left in a daze. That familiar terrifying fluctuation, that oppressive pressure that seemed to come from a superior, caused Zhao Wuhan's heart to beat half a beat slower. This feeling, he had only felt it from the young master. Without a doubt, just like the young master, Bufang's law was a supreme law of the universe. What the hell? Zhao Wuhan felt as if an invisible arrow had pierced through his chest, causing him to feel incomparable sorrow. It was one thing if he couldn't win in a fight, but now, even his law was being suppressed. Didn't Master Qing say that this guy was just a bumpkin from an ordinary macro world? How was this a country bumpkin? Even the young master would not be able to do that. The law of samsara. All the experts present were people of high status in the divine dynasty. As soon as Bufang's law appeared, they naturally recognized it. The most mysterious supreme law of the universe, the transmigration law. Oh my God! Once the law of reincarnation appeared, it transformed into a vortex above Bufang's head. It was like a blazing sun, dazzling and dazzling, shocking everyone. Even the young master, who was standing proudly in the sky and holding the silver dragon sword, was dumbstruck. He had guessed that Bufang might have comprehended a top law, but it never occurred to him that Bufang had comprehended the supreme law of the universe. How many existences in the whole divine dynasty had comprehended the supreme law of the universe? There were 3 young masters, 1 crown prince, and the genius from the top aristocratic family, the Luo family. In total, there were only 5 existences who had comprehended the supreme law of the universe. And that was because they had been living in the divine dynasty since childhood. They had cleansed their bodies with countless treasures of heaven and earth, worked hard under the God King's guidance, and cultivated for 10 years as if it were a day. But, in the end, this chef, who came out of nowhere, actually comprehended the supreme law of the universe. At this moment, the young master suddenly panicked. Luo Sanyang was dumbfounded. She covered her red lips with her delicate hand and did not know how to express the emotions in her heart. Bufang actually comprehended the law of reincarnation, the most mysterious and rarest of the 5 supreme laws of the universe, the law of reincarnation? Hiss! The sound of people sucking in their breaths rang out one after another. Master Cheng's pupils shrank to the size of sesame seeds. His whole body seemed to be convulsing. The supreme law of the universe? Is this a joke? How could a country bumpkin chef from an ordinary great world comprehend the supreme law of the universe, which even the crown prince of the divine dynasty had to go through thousands of hardships to comprehend? Is this a joke? Bufang did not know how many people would be shocked when he displayed the law of reincarnation. At this moment, he was immersed in the nourishment of the law of reincarnation. At the same time, the runes of law spread and lingered around him. His fleshly body kept getting stronger, and his Taotai arm kept absorbing the law of reincarnation. Bufang opened his eyes. He looked at the young master in the sky. You want to see my law. Now you can see it. The corners of Bufang's mouth twitched slightly as he said indifferently. No wonder everyone said that the laws were the foundation of gods. After activating the power of the law, Bufang felt that his fighting prowess had risen to a whole new level. He stomped his foot. Bufang soared into the sky. The runes of law spread across his Taotai arm, looking very magical. At this moment, the young master recovered from his shock. The law of reincarnation. There was a look of excitement in the young master's eyes. Mister, I didn't expect you to comprehend the supreme law of the universe as well. You and I have become friends after a fight. I won't make things difficult for you. I only ask that you fight me with all your might. The young master clenched his silver dragon sword. His fighting spirit soared into the sky. Buzz, the law of destruction surged over his head. 9 silver dragons wheeled around each other. 9 dragons' sword song. Open! The young master roared. It was rare for him to meet a genius who could fight with him, so he was overjoyed. A hearty fight was what he needed. He waved the silver dragon sword, and the 9 silver dragons roared. At this moment, the young master displayed his power to the extreme. He was thoroughly displaying the power of a genius from the divine dynasty. Rumble! The whole King Pingyang's residence seemed to be trembling. The surrounding experts retreated with horror in their eyes, watching the battle in the sky between the two existences who had comprehended the supreme laws of the universe. A battle like this was a once-in-a-century opportunity. After all, there were only a few geniuses in the divine dynasty who had comprehended the supreme laws of the universe. Most of them were in secluded cultivation. They wanted to comprehend more laws and break through to higher realms. The legendary crown prince, who was also the heir of the divine dynasty's god emperor, had comprehended 2 supreme laws of the universe. His strength was so strong that he could suppress a newly advanced high-grade god with his demigod cultivation base. It should be noted that high-grade gods had comprehended 18 laws. At this moment, such an unprecedented battle was unfolding in front of them. Buzz, as soon as the law of reincarnation appeared, the sky changed color instantly. The young master's law of destruction resonated with it. At this moment, all the experts in the divine dynasty's capital sensed the aura. The few geniuses who had been cultivating in seclusion opened their eyes and looked in the direction of King Pingyang's residence. They sensed the strange aura of the supreme laws. However, they did not do anything. They just sighed with emotion for a while, then became more and more eager to cultivate. They, who had comprehended the supreme laws, were the only ones who understood the urgency in their hearts. If they could not even manage themselves, how could they have time to care about others? Bufang stepped up into the sky. There seemed to be a tiger in his chest, and his momentum was rising steadily. It was no weaker than when he used his divine power. This kind of power was terrifying. 9 silver dragons, shrouded in the aura of the law of destruction, rushed down. In the blink of an eye, it exploded around Bufang. The young master's eyes were as bright as pillars as he fixed them on Bufang. He thrust out his sword, which seemed to pierce through the void. Bufang raised his arm. The yin and yang energy swirled around it, and the runes of law filled the air. As Bufang threw out a punch, it immediately carried a vast amount of energy. Facing the 9 dragons, Bufang threw out a punch without hesitation. He threw out a punch. The yin and yang Taotai immediately rushed out of his arm, grabbed the 9 dragons, and began to bite each other. The sword flashed like a dragon. The punch was powerful. The collision between the fist and the sword made everyone shudder with fear. It was extremely terrifying. Boom! Boom! The collision of the law of transmigration and the law of destruction was like the collision of 2 nuclear bombs, causing a loud noise that shattered heaven and earth. The sound of the explosion shook heaven and earth. The whole divine dynasty seemed to be shaking in the explosion. The people present all sucked in their breath. This kind of battle made them very happy to watch. Master Cheng's face was ashen. He knew that he would not be able to kill Bufang this time, and he would probably be killed as well. Zhao Wuhan was dumbfounded. This was Bufang's strength. With such strength, he could probably kill him with a wave of his hand and a stomp of his foot. It was not something he could resist. Were the supreme laws of the universe so terrifying? No wonder the young master scolded him with disappointment. His foundation was not as good as Bufang's, but he was still unwilling to work hard. At this moment, Zhao Wuhan suddenly felt a little remorseful. He regretted his ignorance and incompetence. He finally understood why the heirs of the other aristocratic families cultivated so hard. They just wanted to keep up with the pace of the top geniuses. A boom rang out. Countless sword lights collapsed and scattered. In the sky, a dazzling fist smashed down. It turned into a disk of yin and yang energy. The disk smashed down and collided with the silver dragon sword. A deafening sound filled the air. The next moment, everyone was horrified. The silver dragon sword flew out of his hand. It streaked across the silver light and stabbed into the ground, shaking back and forth. Boom! In the sky, a silhouette was sent flying backward. Blood spurted out of his mouth. The young master, clad in a brocade robe, fell to the ground and staggered back. With every step he took, his aura weakened a little. In the end, his whole body was shaking. In the sky, the light dissipated. The vortex formed by the law of transmigration was spinning. The vermilion robe fluttered. Bufang slowly stepped forward. The power of the Taotai arm and the law of transmigration, the rough yin and yang transmigration fist he had unleashed was unexpectedly strong. He had suppressed the young master with one punch. Chapter 1435. In the sky, a thin figure stood with his hands clasped behind his back. His striped red and white vermilion robe fluttered in the wind, making him look like a banished immortal. However, everyone was shocked. No one had expected the beast-appreciating feast to turn out like this. It had become the young man's stage. He had defeated 3 Pingyang guards with one slash. He had defeated the genius young master with one punch. Such a spectacular achievement was enough to make him famous in the Divine Dynasty's capital. His talent was enough to make him the target of recruitment by all the aristocratic families. Even the imperial family of the Divine Dynasty would extend an olive branch to him. A genius who comprehended the supreme law of the universe had a promising future. On the ground, the young master bowed his head, looking a little dazed. He was defeated. He was actually suppressed by one punch. The people around him were also silent, not knowing what to say. No one had expected the outcome to be like this. The young master, who was known as a genius, was defeated by a chef's fist. Even his sword was knocked flying away. Is he really so strong? Luo Sanyang did not know what to say. Bufang's fearsomeness was beyond her expectation. Zhao Wuhan's face was expressionless. It was numbness. He gave Bufang a deep look. He could not be jealous of Bufang. Perhaps this was why Luo chose Bufang, because he was not as good as Bufang. Zhao Wuhan got up from the ground in embarrassment and walked out of the mansion in a daze. Bufang descended from the sky. The law of transmigration disappeared. The oppressive force he exuded was gone as well. If he used the law of transmigration, Bufang's fighting prowess should be close to that of a mid-grade god. Even so, it was enough to show how terrifying Bufang was. The young master's absent-mindedness did not last long. After all, he was a genius and his mental endurance was very strong. He might not be able to accept his failure for a while, but after thinking about it carefully, he figured it out. Maybe father is right. I'm still too impetuous. Maybe this is the gap between me and other geniuses. The young master smiled bitterly and looked at Bufang with a helpless look in his eyes. Today's defeat was not necessarily a bad thing for him. From today onwards, he needed to cultivate even harder. He had always wanted to see the limits of his combat power, but he didn't know that he had already been surpassed by someone. Thank you for showing mercy. The law of reincarnation truly lives up to its reputation. The young master pulled out the silver dragon sword, glanced at Bufang and said with a smile. His complexion returned to normal as he wiped away the blood stain at the corner of his mouth, his expression indifferent. Bufang looked at the young master in surprise. He didn't expect him to be such an open-minded person. Bufang nodded at the young master, and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. The young master was careless, Bufang said. The young master burst out laughing. He looked at Bufang with admiration in his eyes. A defeat is a defeat, but I won't be defeated again. The young master chuckled. My strength is nothing among the geniuses who have comprehended the supreme laws of the universe. You should be careful, mister. When those geniuses come out of seclusion, they will surely come to see your law of reincarnation. The law of reincarnation is extremely mysterious among the supreme laws of the universe. The young master's words seemed to carry a hint of warning. Bufang nodded. The young master was not a domineering existence. Perhaps this was the reason why the divine dynasty could prosper. The top existences of the younger generation were all chasing after power, and there was no intrigue. This would only make the divine dynasty stronger and stronger. Since the seven-colored sky-devouring python has run away, then so be it. This king will not pursue it. It's just a worldly possession, and I just find it interesting. After today's defeat, this king has also thought it through. Instead of focusing on those things, it's better to focus on cultivation. If I can become a god king, I can even capture a golden-winged roc as a mount. The young master roared with laughter. His words were arrogant, but he had the capital to be so. Bufang twitched the corner of his mouth and nodded. He agreed with the young master's idea. However, it would be a pity to use a golden-winged roc as a mount. It would be best to barbecue it. Roast a roc. Call it a roc. Even a god king would drool over such a top-notch dish. Clap, clap. Just then, the young master raised his hand and slapped it down. Immediately, the sound of a zither rang out from all directions. The servants, who had been watching the fight for a long time, came out one after another. Holding the piping hot dishes, Yi Zichen, although the seven-colored sky-devouring python was gone, the banquet still had to be held. Otherwise, the food would be wasted. In fact, many people present did not come for the seven-colored sky-devouring python, but for the food at the banquet. Master Cheng left dejectedly. Zhao Wuhan, on the other hand, returned to the Zhao family in a daze and began to cultivate in seclusion. As the banquet continued, the young master took Bufang's hand and kept talking. From time to time, he would stroke Bufang's palm with his palm, which made Bufang's hair stand on end. The food tasted bland and tasteless. These dishes were cooked by the Earth Divine chef that the young master had specially invited. The aroma assailed everyone's nostrils and whetted their appetite. The young master thought highly of Bufang, and he felt as if he had found a confidant. He kept talking to Bufang. He even revealed his intention to recruit Bufang. Of course, Bufang turned him down. Luo Sanyang was very anxious, but she breathed a sigh of relief when she heard Bufang's refusal. She called the young master's treachery. Bufang's talent was too extraordinary. Whether it was his talent in cultivation or cooking, he was worthy of the divine chef temple's recruitment. If she was deceived by the young master, she would have to cry in the toilet. After the meal, she took Bufang's hand and left King Pingyang's residence. The young master had been standing at the entrance of the mansion, watching Bufang leave. After that, the crowd dispersed. Only King Pingyang's residence was left in a mess. However, the servants began to get busy, and before long, they had tidied up the mess. Rumble! In the sky, all of a sudden, an explosion rang out. The void was torn apart. A 5-clawed silver dragon wheeled in the sky. The silver dragon pulled a chariot, on which stood a stalwart figure. The chariot rumbled, crushing the void with its weight. The young master looked up and was slightly shocked when he saw the scene. He quickly bowed. "Father," the young master said respectfully. The servants around him also knelt on the ground with great respect. The chariot landed. The silver dragon shrunk into a small silver snake and coiled around the burly man's body. A terrifying aura fluctuated on the man's body, and the aura around him seemed to be able to shatter the void. "Oh? You're holding a banquet again? Why don't you focus on your cultivation? Indulging in debauchery all day long, what a scandal!" The burly man glanced coldly at the young master. That made the young master's heart tremble. In the past, he would not have been convinced because he was a genius who had comprehended the supreme law of the universe and was extremely proud. But after being defeated by Bufang today, his mentality had changed a lot. "You're right, father. It's my fault. Father, I have a request," the young master said with a respectful look on his face. King Pingyang paused slightly. Why is this boy's attitude a little strange today? Did he get into trouble again? Tell me. I want to cultivate the 10,000 dragons' sword song. Please grant my wish, father. The young master looked up, his eyes full of determination. His determination made King Pingyang arch his brows slightly. This boy looks like he's been stimulated by something inside the luxurious warship. For a moment, the atmosphere was a little quiet. Luo Sanyang's long eyelashes fluttered slightly as she stared at Bufang with her charming big eyes. It was as if she wanted to see through Bufang. She did not expect that Bufang, who looked like a country bumpkin, had hidden his strength. He had suppressed the young master with one punch. This was something she had never thought of before. Divine powers, supreme laws, cooking skills, all of this made Bufang seem to be shrouded in a layer of vague gauze. The more she wanted to find out, the more incredulous she found it. Ahem, the awkward atmosphere made Bufang a little uncomfortable. He cleared his throat expressionlessly, breaking the silence in the warship. Thank you for your help, Steward Luo, Bufang said. In fact, Luo Sanyang should have guessed that the disappearance of the 7-colored sky-devouring python had something to do with him, but she still stood on his side, even if it meant offending the young master. For this, Bufang had to thank her. I know you went to King Pingyang's residence for the 7-colored sky-devouring python. Luo Sanyang stretched lazily, showing off her voluptuous figure. I didn't expect you to be so bold. But you have the capital to be bold. I'm afraid the news of you defeating the young master will spread throughout the divine dynasty's capital tomorrow, and the news that you have comprehended the supreme law of the universe will soon spread. Luo Sanyang said. Her face suddenly became a little serious. The tallest tree in the forest will be destroyed by the wind. You should know this. You are just a demigod from an ordinary great world. Even if you have comprehended the supreme law of the universe, you are still nothing in the divine dynasty's capital. Although the heir to the throne is the crown prince, the princes are also fighting for power. People with great potential like you will certainly be recruited, so your situation is not very good. But now that you are under the divine chef temple, You have nothing to worry about, Luo Sanyang said. Bufang nodded. Of course, he understood this. But he did not care. What he cared about now was how to find the Lord Go and the others. In fact, it was not a bad thing to become famous. At least, once he became famous, it would be much easier for the Lord Go to find him. Let's go. Let's go back to the Divine Chef Temple first. It's time to settle some scores. Suddenly, Luo Sanyang pursed her red lips into a cold smile. Bufang paused. Then, he twitched the corner of his mouth disdainfully. Yes, it's time to settle some scores. If I kill him, will the Divine Chef Temple blame me? Bufang said expressionlessly. No, no, no. I don't know anything. Luo Sanyang narrowed her eyes like a lazy cat and stared at Bufang. Chapter 1436. He returned to the distinguished guest tower of the Divine Chef Temple. Bufang did not immediately go to find Master Cheng. Although Master Cheng had risked his face to plot against Bufang, he did not care. However, Bufang did not care. Sometimes, with absolute strength, no matter what schemes you had, you would have nothing to fear. Of course, it was also because Bufang could not wait to see Hua. She returned to the luxurious guest room. After saying goodbye to Bufang, Luo Sanyang's face darkened. She knew that Master Cheng was in trouble. Bufang closed the door. With a thought, he entered the heaven and earth farmland. That was right. Back in King Pingyang's residence, Bufang had taken Hua into the farmland at the last moment. That was why the young master could not find Hua. Of course, taking Hua into the farmland would cause a violent fluctuation of the will of the Great Path. The fluctuation was obvious, so Bufang used an explosion to cover it up. Although it was exposed by Master Cheng in the end, it was all solved perfectly now. His mind went into the farmland. A warm breeze was blowing. A rich fruity aroma filled the air. It was harvest time in the farmland. Bufang landed and stepped on the crisp grass. The fragrance of grass, fruit, and earth assailed his nostrils. Bufang walked with his hands clasped behind his back and took a deep breath. In front of the wooden hut, Hua had transformed into a young girl. Her slender figure was curvaceous, and she was sitting in Nyo Hansen's wooden chair, munching on a juicy spirit fruit. Nyo Hansen was sitting at the side with a smile on his face, holding a fruit basket full of spirit fruits and emanating dense spiritual energy. When he saw Bufang, Nyo Hansen put down the fruit basket and hurried to greet Bufang. "Io, Owner Bu, what brings you here?" Nyo Hansen's face was full of smiles. Now that the heaven and earth farmland was in good order, he hoped that Bufang could come here every day. Bufang nodded and chatted with Nyo Hansen for a while. He couldn't wait to come to Hua's side. Bufang's eyes sharpened as he stared at Hua. "Are you okay?" Bufang asked. Hua opened her mouth wide and stuffed the entire fist-sized spirit fruit into her mouth. A satisfied look appeared on her beautiful face. She looked at Bufang, grinned, and shook her head. "I'm fine, how did you get caught?" Bufang asked the question he wanted to ask the most. Hua stuffed another spirit fruit into her mouth. Perhaps she was starving. "We encountered another space beast in the space turbulence. We were separated. When I rushed out of the teleportation portal, I was surrounded and beaten up," Flowery said innocently. She didn't know what had happened. "Another savage beast? Are you saying that everyone is scattered? Lord Go and you were separated?" Bufang furrowed his brows. He felt that the situation was getting serious. He thought that after finding Hua, he would be able to know more about Lord Go. What was that savage beast? Bufang took a deep breath. Bufang thought that there was only one. He didn't expect that there would be two, I think so. But with Lord Go's power, he shouldn't be in danger. But I'm not sure about you, Big Sister Hua. Hua's mood became a little gloomy. It was a bad start. As soon as they left the netherworld, they encountered such difficulties. It was all because of that savage beast. Bufang furrowed his brows, and there was a sharp look in his eyes. That savage beast was definitely not dead. Even if he used the perishing pot, he might not be able to kill it, all right. You have a good rest. You can choose to stay in the heaven and earth farmland or go out with me. Bufang looked at Hua, letting her make the choice. After all, Hua had been captured by the young master, so she couldn't hide the seven-colored sky-devouring python's aura. Once she went out, she would probably be exposed. However, Bufang didn't care. He had the confidence to protect Hua now. I want to go out. I don't want to stay here, Hua said hurriedly. Tears streamed down Johansen's cheek. Even so many spirit fruits couldn't keep you? Bufang respected Hua's choice, but to avoid unnecessary trouble, Bufang stipulated that after Hua went out, she had to stay in her human form most of the time. Hua naturally wouldn't object, and she nodded her head quickly. They rested in the heaven and earth farmland for a while. Bufang sat cross-legged under the 9-revolution Great Path tea tree, closing his eyes to rest. His divine sense slowly became more condensed in the tea tree's unique essence. The heaven tree swayed gently, its leaves lush and green. On it, a blooming senseless lotus was emitting a brilliant light. After a battle, Bufang needed to consolidate his cultivation base. Under the cultivation of the heaven tree and the great path tree, Bufang's understanding of the laws became more condensed. Time passed. Bufang opened his eyes and left the heaven and earth farmland. He didn't bring Hua out for the time being. Bufang planned to let Hua work as a waiter in the restaurant, and he would let Hua leave when the restaurant opened. Stretching his back, Bufang rose to his feet. He took a bath in a luxurious room. Wrapped in a bath towel, his hair was still dripping water, and his fair chest was almost exposed. He rested for the night. The next day, Bufang left the guest room. Walking in the distinguished guest tower, many people saw Bufang and recognized Bufang, and their faces showed awe. Whether they were gods or demigods, spirit divine chefs or earth divine chefs, Bufang's achievements yesterday had spread throughout the divine dynasty. Today, most people in the divine dynasty knew that Bufang had comprehended the law of transmigration, the supreme law of the universe. He had even defeated the young master of King Pingyang. Some people greeted Bufang enthusiastically when they saw him. The situation made Bufang a little uncomfortable. He didn't go to the divine chef temple. Bufang walked out of the distinguished guest tower and planned to wander around the divine dynasty. Luo Sanyang didn't come to him today, but Bufang didn't mind. After all, she was the steward of the divine chef temple, and she had a lot of things to do. Bufang boarded the dragon carriage. As the coachman cracked his whip, the carriage moved slowly. It was much slower than Luo Sanyang's warship. Bufang missed Luo Sanyang's luxurious warship a little. However, there was an advantage to riding in the carriage, which was that he could enjoy the scenery of the divine dynasty's capital up close. The coachman didn't dare to breathe too loudly. Bufang was an existence who walked out of the divine chef temple's distinguished guest tower. That identity was not something he could touch, so he just needed to pull the carriage. Bufang was glad to have some peace and quiet. Before long, the carriage arrived in front of Luo Sanyang's commercial building. Bufang got out of the carriage and paid the coachman the source stones. In the divine dynasty, source stones were the only and universal currency. When Bufang opened his restaurant, he would probably use source stones as the currency. Source stones were an important cultivation resource. In the divine dynasty, many aristocratic families had powerful industries in order to earn source stones and increase their cultivation resources. Bufang stepped into the commercial building. It was a prosperous commercial building, with all kinds of shops on each floor. There were also many gourmet shops on each floor. Each floor had a different cuisine. Bufang had nothing to do. So, he went to one shop after another. In any case, he had a lot of source stones now. The divine chef temple was very generous and never stingy with source stones. The chefs in these restaurants were not weak. Most of them were earth divine chefs. In fact, those who were not Earth-divine chefs would not dare to open a restaurant in such a prosperous commercial district. Shuttling between the restaurants, Bu Fong tasted the delicacies. Earth-divine chefs had formed their own school of cooking, and they had their own style. Every dish they cooked was superb. At least, in terms of taste, Bu Fong could not find any major fault. At this level, however, cooking was not just about the surface. It was more about the emotions contained in the ingredients and the dishes that had been cooked. The higher the level of cooking, the more important the emotions contained in the dishes. The better the cooking, the more important the emotions contained in the dishes. They could determine the quality of a dish. He grabbed a pair of chopsticks. Bu Fong picked up a piece of meat that was covered in juice. He stuffed it into his mouth and took a bite. The juice splashed out and the meat inside filled his mouth. The meat was obviously not ordinary, and it was just right when mixed with the other ingredient. If there was one flaw, it would probably be the knife skills. From the perspective of knife skills, it might be slightly inferior. In front of Bu Fong was a table full of dishes. As an excellent chef, he must learn humbly and not be too proud. Even if it was a very ordinary chef, there were still points in his cooking that could be learned. Tap, 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 Luo Sanyang came over, swaying her body. It was not difficult for her to find out Bu Fong's whereabouts. When she learned that Bu Fong was in her commercial building, she came over in her red boot. Luo Sanyang did not know whether to laugh or cry when she saw Bu Fong eating the delicacies so happily. You're still in the mood to eat and drink. Old Man Ching has escaped. Luo Sanyang sat opposite Bu Fong with a gust of fragrant wind. A rich meaty aroma burst out of Bu Fong's mouth. Oh? He escaped? Bu Fong paused. That old man has a good interpersonal relationship. He bribed someone in the Divine Chef Temple's prison and escaped overnight. However, I think he is too ashamed to stay in the Divine Dynasty now. Of course, you still have to be careful. That old man is narrow-minded, and he might come to you for revenge. After all, you have taken everything that belonged to him. Luo Sanyang picked up a pair of chopsticks and sniffed the aroma. Then, she picked up a piece of meat and stuffed it into her mouth. I took it with my strength. How can he take revenge? Bu Fong said indifferently, twitching the corner of his mouth. After that, Bu Fong put down his chopstick. Luo Sanyang smiled. You're right. Strength speaks in the Divine Chef Temple. Suddenly she paused. She seemed to feel Bu Fong's serious gaze. She was puzzled. Bu Fong's serious gaze made her heart skip a beat, and her little heart began to beat wildly. This young man. Could it be, Steward Luo, I have something to trouble you with? Bu Fong thought for a moment and said solemnly to Luo Sanyang. What is it? Luo Sanyang was a little disappointed, but she still asked doubtfully. I need you to help me find some information. Bu Fong thought for a moment, then told Luo Sanyang about you and Lord Go. As it turned out, Luo Sanyang was trustworthy. All right, leave it to me, Luo Sanyang. Luo Sanyang patted her bulging chest confidently. Also, when will your restaurant open? Do you really not want me to find you a professional renovation team? Luo Sanyang squinted at Bu Fong suspiciously. It opens tomorrow, said Bu Fong. Tomorrow? Luo Sanyang paused, and the doubt in her eyes grew. Bu Fong has been eating and drinking, but I don't see him renovate. Is he really going to open tomorrow? If such a good shop was wasted by Bu Fong, she would feel a little heartache. Oh right. Luo Sanyang seemed to think of something. She cupped her chin and looked at Bu Fong. Your deeds yesterday have spread, and many people have come to me, asking me to introduce them to you. There are princes, heirs of aristocratic families, and a few coquettish bitches from aristocratic families. Do you want to meet them? Luo Sanyang asked. Bu Fong ate the last mouthful of food and wiped his mouth with a white cloth. He glanced at Luo Sanyang with a straight face. No. Reject them all for me. Chapter 1437. No. Luo Sanyang paused. She did not expect that Bufang would refuse so readily. Are you sure you don't want to see them? Those coquettish bitches are all famous beauties in the divine dynasty. Each of them is graceful and charming, and they are the dream lovers of many geniuses. Luo Sanyang rested her chin on her hand and said with a smile. Bufang glanced at her. Are you sure she's not talking about me? Anyway, it doesn't matter. The restaurant opens tomorrow. They can come to the restaurant for dinner, but there will be no discount, Bufang said. After that, he rose to his feet and prepared to leave the restaurant. Luo Sanyang followed him. She did not mind. Although Bufang was only a spirit divine chef, as a divine chef who could break the inheritance seal, his restaurant could not be that bad. Bufang did not go back to his restaurant. Instead, he boarded Luo Sanyang's warship and returned to the divine chef temple. He had eaten and drunk. Bufang was satisfied. The dishes of those earth divine chefs naturally had their own extraordinary qualities. However, Bufang was confident in his dishes. He was confident that he could fight his way out of the restaurant industry, which was controlled by many earth divine chefs. They returned to the divine chef temple. Luo Sanyang brought Bufang to the place where the inheritance was sealed. There was more than one inheritance seal. There were many seals. Although Bufang had broken one, there were many more. That was why the divine chef temple valued Bufang so much. After all, it was not that easy to break the inheritance seal of an ancient heaven god. This is the second layer of the seal. After the first layer of the seal has been broken, the second layer of the seal has appeared. Luo Sanyang leaned against the railing, pointing at the seal in the distance as she spoke in a languid manner. Her beautiful eyes flickered slightly as she looked at Bufang. Would you like to give it a try, Mr. Bu? She said with a smile. Try the second seal? Bufang frowned and looked at it seriously. I'll let the others try first. Luo Sanyang smiled without waiting for Bufang's reply. Then, he called out to a spirit divine chef in the distance. Without hesitation, the divine chef walked straight to the seal. When the first seal was broken, the tests were gone, so these divine chefs had nothing to do in the past few days. And now, the second layer of the seal had appeared. They were all rubbing their fists, eager to give it a try. The spirit divine chef stood in front of the seal. Soon, the divine sense in his mind was mobilized. As spirit divine chefs, they were basically demigod. Of course, there were also some who were god-level experts. The divine chef chosen by Luo Sanyang was a god. He was a divine chef who had comprehended the power of law. His divine sense surged and quickly collided with the power of the seal. Boom! Then, the god opened his eyes. A unique aura seemed to be released from the inheritance seal and instantly spread across the entire area. Buzz, a large group of divine chefs, was watching. They were all very curious about the unknown second seal. A number emerged over the inheritance seal. It was somewhat similar to the first seal. The number began to jump. It became 1. Then, after a few breaths, it began to jump. Finally, when it reached 100, suddenly, the divine chef opened his eyes, which turned red and bloodshot in an instant. The divine chef's body began to shake violently like a sieve. Blood oozed out of his 7 orifices. The appearance of this scene caused everyone to panic. Bufang could not help but furrow his brows. Luo Sanyang's calm eyes narrowed. Her figure disappeared on the spot as if she had teleported, and when she reappeared, it was as if she had teleported. When she reappeared, she was right in front of the inheritance seal. She raised her slender hand and placed it on the divine chef's body. She sucked in a breath of cold air. A pressure that seemed to have descended from the 9 heavens suddenly smashed into Luo Sanyang's body. Luo Sanyang's face turned pale in an instant. The hand on the divine chef's body loosened as if it was pricked by a needle. He quickly retreated a few steps and leaned against the wall. The divine chef's body trembled and became stiff. Then, he fell to the ground with a thud. The impact kicked up a cloud of dust. Everyone was stunned. What happened? How could a god fall just like that? The surrounding divine chefs felt their blood run cold. Such a situation was something that they rarely encountered, and this time, it made them a little flustered. Could it be that there was danger in breaking the inheritance seal? Bufang landed on the ground and walked up to the divine chef. His divine sense surged. The spirit divine chef fell to the ground, his eyes wide and filled with confusion. Clearly, he did not understand how he died. His divine sense has collapsed, and his spirit sea is gone. Bufang retracted his divine sense and sucked in a breath of cold air. The way he died was a little miserable. It wasn't that easy for a god to die, but a mere legacy seal had actually caused one of them to perish. Luo Sanyang rose to her feet. Clearly, the situation was somewhat beyond her expectation. Is he dead? Luo Sanyang's complexion returned to normal. Her face recovered a little, but it still looked a little ugly. She had just wanted to test the inheritance seal before asking Bufang to intervene. But now, it seemed that the seal was still dangerous. Since it was dangerous, she could not let Bufang intervene easily. Bufang was very important and he could not die like this. Mr. Bu, don't touch the inheritance seal for the time being. Report what happened here to the higher-ups first. This is the first time this has happened. Luo Sanyang took a deep breath and said. The surrounding divine chefs were a little panicked. A god had died because he was trying to break the inheritance seal. In that case, would they still dare to break the inheritance seal? They did not dare to. They were weaker than gods. Even a god had been crushed. What qualifications did they have to touch the seal? Luo Sanyang's mind was in a mess at the moment. After warning Bufang, she turned and could not wait to leave. The death of a god-level divine chef was not a trivial matter. The divine chef temple had invited many divine chefs this time. However, there were not many divine chefs at this level. The earth divine chefs and spirit divine chefs were all worried, and they stopped studying the inheritance seal. Since it was a matter of life and death, they were naturally afraid. Luo Sanyang turned and left. However, before she could reach the door, cries of alarm came from behind her. The uproar caused Luo Sanyang's body to tremble slightly. She jerked her head around. Then, he saw Bufang standing in front of the inheritance seal without him noticing. What? Luo Sanyang's pupils constricted. The surrounding divine chefs had the same reaction as her. This is crazy. He knows that a divine chef is dead, but Bufang still dares to break the inheritance seal. He doesn't take life and death seriously at all. The crowd cried out in alarm. However, at this moment, Bufang could no longer hear what they were shouting. His mind had fallen into the inheritance seal. It was the second seal. Unlike the first seal, this one was very heavy. When Bufang's mind sank into it, an old voice rang out. The wok-tossing art of affliction, rumble. A heavy black wok appeared in front of Bufang's eyes. The black wok appeared there, as if it was going to crush the void, filling everyone's vision. Bufang furrowed his brows. In his divine sense, the black wok was like an endless black hole. It seemed to be devouring his divine sense all the time. After a long time, Bufang sensed the task of breaking the second seal. In fact, it was somewhat similar to the task of breaking the first seal. There were also 3 small tasks. The first one was tossing the wok 999 times, within half an hour. Tossing the wok? Bufang took a deep breath. His mind flickered. Immediately, his mind seemed to enter a mysterious space. A black wok emerged in front of him. In it, there was sand that looked like diamond dust. Bufang reached out a hand and grabbed the wok. Immediately, he felt an unparalleled weight. The black wok seemed to crush the void, and Bufang could not lift it with one hand. He grabbed it with both hands at the same time, and only then did he manage to lift it. His divine sense wrapped around it. As his divine sense kept flowing away, Bufang felt that the black wok had become much lighter. However, it also consumed a lot of his divine sense. No wonder that divine chef's divine sense collapsed and he died. Bufang guessed that he had used all his divine sense on tossing the wok. The wok-tossing technique of affliction should not be much weaker than the kitchen knife of affliction. After completing the task, he should be able to comprehend the divine ability. At the thought of the rarity of divine abilities, Bufang's eyes lit up. Without hesitation, his divine sense wrapped around the wok. Boom! His arm suddenly exerted force, and the yin and yang Taotai souls in his Taotai arm seemed to let out angry bestial roars. Dragon-like muscles covered it. Bufang grabbed the black wok with both hands. He tossed the wok in the orthodox way. Rumble! The mouth of the wok was pushed forward, causing the black wok to collide with the stove, producing a clanging sound. Then, the fine diamond sand in the black wok surged up with a crashing sound. It rolled up like a wave, and when it fell down, it smashed into the black wok. Like a thunderclap, a rumbling sound rang out. Tossing the wok once, Bufang exhaled softly. He felt that some of his divine sense was sucked away. That made Bufang's eyes slightly narrow. Every time he tossed the wok, some of his divine sense would be sucked away. If he tossed the wok 999 times, the amount of divine sense sucked away would be tremendous. An ordinary person's divine sense might not be able to withstand it. No wonder that divine chef's divine sense was sucked away. Outside, looking at Bufang's motionless figure, everyone was a little frightened. A number emerged above the inheritance seal over Bufang's head. Everyone looked at the number in horror, feeling that it was a death warrant. Back then, when the number jumped to 100, that god had suddenly died. Could Bufang hold on? She held her breath and stared at the number. Bufang's rash action had made her a little flustered. However, no matter how flustered she was, she had to face reality. She could only hope that Bufang could survive. She had no idea how dangerous the ancient heaven god's inheritance seal was. The number jumped. 10, 20, 30. Soon, the number changed again. Buzz, finally, it turned into the 100 that killed that divine chef. The number reached 100. Everyone held their breaths as they stared fixedly at Su Mo. When the number reached 100, Bufang's movements and expression changed abruptly. Chapter 1438. The Wok-Tossing Art of Affliction. In fact, wok-tossing was a necessary skill for all chefs. Basically, every chef was very familiar with it. Wok-tossing was the foundation, and it was the first skill one had to learn at the beginning of cooking. But in the days that followed, chefs did not pay so much attention to it. Very few people would go out of their way to learn it. Bufang was very surprised to see the wok-tossing skill in the inheritance seal this time. However, Bufang would not ignore it. The wok-tossing art of affliction was a technique that was directly reflected in Bufang's mind. Bufang only needed to perform it according to the technique in his mind. Swish! The diamond-like sand and stones fluttered in the air, sparkling with a bright light. As the number of wok tosses increased, Bufang felt the pressure on his divine sense growing stronger. It was like a millstone was spinning, exerting great pressure on his divine sense and crushing it. She stared at Bufang. She could feel the change in Bufang's aura, and it made her shudder. The change frightened her, and she was worried that Bufang would die suddenly like the previous divine chef. If that happened, it would be a great loss for the divine chef temple. 100. It was a very sensitive number. However, it did not stay there for long, and soon it was replaced by a new number. Seeing the change in the numbers, everyone couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief, and their minds relaxed. There was no doubt that Bufang did not die suddenly when the number reached 100 like the previous divine chef. This made many people feel much more at ease. However, they did not relax. If he did not die suddenly at 100, he might die suddenly at another number. They did not know what Bufang and the previous divine chef had gone through. Perhaps it was the same as the test of the first seal. It was all about how many times he had to swing the knife. However, these were just their guesses. They could only wait for Bufang to complete the test before they could know the specific news. The number kept changing. Soon, it jumped to 200 and it did not stop. It kept going up. 300, 400, 500. The change in the numbers caused everyone's heart to tense up. That string seemed like it would snap at any moment. 800. Stop. The previous one died at 100, as expected of the person who broke the first inheritance seal. He is indeed a monster. The surrounding divine chefs gradually broke free from their fear and became much calmer. They started to exclaim, shocked by Bufang's strength. 990. Everyone saw that Bufang's face had turned pale. 999. Boom. Just as the number jumped to 999, everyone's eyes couldn't help but freeze. Then, a strange energy wave spread out, filling the entire area. Voila! Bufang, who had been as steady as a rock, moved. His body swayed for a while, and his pale face suddenly turned red. After completing the small task, the drained divine senses were quickly fed back into Bufang's spirit sea. Moreover, the strength of the divine senses that were fed back seemed to have increased by a level. Bufang paused for a moment as he sensed his much stronger divine sense. Originally, his divine sense could only cover a range of 10 miles, which was already the level of most mid-grade gods in the divine dynasty's capital. After the nourishment, Bufang's divine sense could cover a range of 100 miles. This level of divine sense had long surpassed the realm of demigods. The pressure of the divine sense faded away. The pressure that shrouded everyone's hearts gradually spread out. Everyone stared at Bufang with fanaticism. Bufang was not dead. He had survived the test of the second inheritance seal. Luo Sanyang's figure flickered and appeared in front of him. She stared at Bufang with a worried and excited look on her face. She was worried that something might happen to Bufang. She was excited because Bufang had survived the test. "How are you? Do you feel any discomfort?" she asked quickly. At the same time, the other divine chefs swarmed over and surrounded Bufang in an instant. They were also very curious about what Bufang had gone through. Bufang's face was calm. He still had the wak-tossing spell of affliction in his mind. However, he could not use it in reality. Obviously, without completing all the tasks, Bufang could not complete the wak-tossing spell of affliction. He exhaled softly. Then, he glanced at the people around him. Bufang told them what he knew. When he mentioned the wak-tossing spell of affliction, everyone went crazy. That was a divine power. To comprehend a divine power, one had to become a god-king or comprehend the supreme law of the universe. But now there was a shortcut. That was to comprehend from the inheritance seal. This was an opportunity for everyone present. Even Luo Sanyang was a little tempted. However, she knew that she was not a chef and could not comprehend that divine power. A friendly reminder. This test is very dangerous, and ordinary people had better not try it. Otherwise, you will end up like that divine chef. Bufang said seriously. He felt that he had to emphasize this point. Luo Sanyang's face grew serious. If even Bufang said it was dangerous, then it should be really dangerous. However, Luo Sanyang did nothing to stop him. She glanced at the crowd. When these divine chefs learned that Bufang could comprehend a divine power, they were so excited that they could not listen to anything else. The temptation of a divine power was too great for them. Bufang did not say anything. He clasped his hands behind his back and left. The test was divided into 3 stages. The first stage was to toss the wok 999 times. The second stage was to toss the wok 9,999 times. The third stage was to toss the wok 99,999 times. Every mission was different, and the difficulty of the test would increase exponentially. Bufang could pass the first stage, But Bufang did not have the slightest confidence to toss the wok 9,999 times in the second stage. So, Bufang did not choose to continue the test. Instead, he left. In any case, the tests of the 3 stages did not overlap. As long as he completed one of the tests, he could continue the test. However, he was not allowed to fail. Once he failed, his divine sense would collapse, and in serious cases, he would die. Luo Sanyang and Bufang left. Bufang went straight to his luxurious room. He needed to rest. As for Luo Sanyang, she went to the divine chef temples higher up. Such an important matter naturally needed to be explained clearly. The next day it was just dawn. Bufang, who had been sitting cross-legged all night, slowly opened his eyes. His slightly swollen divine sense had recovered, and Bufang breathed a sigh of relief. Bufang needed time to get used to the sudden strengthening of his divine sense. So, he spent the whole night consolidating it. He rose to his feet, stretched his back, and heard the system's serious voice in his head. "Attention, host. The restaurant's renovation has been completed." The renovation has been completed? This did not surprise Bufang. He wondered what style the system would decorate the restaurant into. According to the system's character, it should not be a gorgeous style. It might be very simple. He pushed the door of his luxurious room open. Bufang walked out of the room. His face was indifferent as he walked along the wide avenue of the distinguished guest tower. The divine chef temple was quiet. This made Bufang feel a little strange. However, he soon realized that these divine chefs must have learned about the inheritance seal, so they had all gone to try it. Naturally, Bufang could not stop them. The temptation of the divine power was too great. All Bufang could do was wish them good luck. Luo Sanyang did not appear. Bufang got into the dragon chariot. The coachman flicked his whip, and the chariot sped away. It did not last long. Soon, Bufang came to Luo Sanyang's property, which was the skyscraper. He had said that the restaurant would be open today. He stepped into the skyscraper. The light of the transportation array flashed, and Bufang soon came to the top floor. The restaurant's door was locked. With his hands clasped behind his back, Bufang came to the door. A clanging sound rang out. The metal doors of the restaurant, which were engraved with mysterious patterns, suddenly emitted a rumbling sound and slowly opened to both sides. Bufang's eyes lit up. He stepped into the restaurant. As soon as he stepped inside, he was shocked by the brand-new renovation style. It was completely different from the previous restaurant. Compared with the previous restaurant, it was much more luxurious and luxurious. Transparent floor-to-ceiling windows, golden bricks, glazed tiles, upright floor lamps, and small table lamps that emitted a dim yellow light. Compared with the previous restaurant, this one had a different style. There were not many seats in the restaurant. 4 tables were placed close to each other. With his hands clasped behind his back, Bufang walked around the restaurant, taking in the brand-new renovation style as if he was admiring it. Nothing in the kitchen had changed much. Xiaobai was already standing at the kitchen door, waiting for Bufang. Overall, Bufang was satisfied with the renovation. It was rare for the system to be so generous as to make such a renovation. The restaurant also had a small balcony. That was because it was located on the top floor. There were a few chairs on the balcony. Bufang pulled a chair over and leaned against it. As he felt the warm breeze caressing him, a satisfied look appeared on his face. After a long time, Bufang breathed a sigh of relief. It was time to open the restaurant. Bufang still remembered the system's temporary task very clearly. He was to open a branch in the Shui Divine Dynasty's capital. There was also a temporary task reward. In other words, it was a fruit of law. A fruit of law. At the thought of the fruit of law, Bufang's eyes lit up. After eating the fruit of law, he wandered in the sea of law and comprehended the law of transmigration. He wondered if eating another fruit of law would help him smoothly break through to the God realm. Ting-a-ling, Suddenly, a sound came from outside the door. The restaurant's door opened automatically. Luo Sanyang and several figures walked in. Bu Fong was slightly taken aback. "Mr. Bu, we're here to support you. How can it be so quiet on the opening of a new restaurant?" Luo Sanyang said to Bu Fong with a smile from a distance. She was followed by a group of people. Their auras fluctuated, and their eyes were bright. Clearly, they were not ordinary people. Luo Sanyang came to Bu Fong's side. Looking at Bu Fong, who was curled up in a chair, she narrowed her eyes and smiled. Suddenly, her face became serious. "Owner Bu, the information you asked me to find out. I've found something." "Oh?" Bu Fong, who had risen from the chair, paused for a moment. Then, he focused his eyes and looked at Luo Sanyang. Luo Sanyang did not seem to know how to answer the question. She looked a little hesitant. "The result is not good news. Does Mr. Bu still want to know?" Chapter 1439. The result of the investigation is not good news. "Mr. Bu, do you still want to know?" Luo Sanyang stared straight at Bu Fong and said seriously. Bu Fong could feel that she was not joking. Immediately, Bu Fong's eyes became sharp. "Not good news? Then, it's bad news. Did something happen to Lord Go and the others?" Bu Fong stared at Luo Sanyang and motioned for her to continue. Seeing Bu Fong's expression, Luo Sanyang understood that Bu Fong wanted to know the news. She sighed softly. Luo Sanyang furrowed her pretty brows. "Owner Bu, you asked me to investigate a dog and 2 people, right?" she asked. Bu Fong nodded his head, his face solemn. "I can't find anything about the dog, but I did find something about those 2 people," Luo Sanyang sighed. Obviously, the bad news was also about those 2 people. They are related to the Mo family, one of the top aristocratic families in the Divine Dynasty. Luo Sanyang looked at Bu Fong. There are 3 top aristocratic families in the Divine Dynasty: the Luo family, the Mo family, and the Zhao family. The Zhao family is Zhao Wuhan's family. Although Zhao Wuhan is ignorant and incompetent, his family background is very strong. The Luo family is my family, and it has some status in the Divine Dynasty. As for the Mo family, it is the most ferocious of the 3 families. Luo Sanyang gave Bu Fong some general knowledge. Bu Fong nodded. "What does this have to do with you and the others? I told you before that there are many geniuses among the heirs of the aristocratic families, right? But, in fact, there are many stupid and crazy people in the aristocratic families. They don't have the talent of the heirs, but they also pursue the ultimate power. Your friend was captured by such lunatics from the Mo family," Luo Sanyang said with a sigh. "It was not a good thing to be captured by that crazy guy from the Mo family." Bu Fong's friend was really sad. Bu Fong's face turned cold. "Where is the Mo family?" Bu Fong asked indifferently. He did not want to say too much. He had to save you and Hades' era. Bu Fong did not know where the Lord Go was. Now that he knew where you and Hades' era were, how could Bu Fong sit back and do nothing? Besides, you have a special identity. Mu Hongzhi had reminded Bu Fong before. However, Bu Fong did not expect that he would be separated from you and the others as soon as he arrived at the capital. "Are you really going to interfere? As for your 2 friends, there's nothing much to say about the man, but the woman is a cursed goddess, and the power of her curse has completely broken out. Now that she has fallen into the hands of the Mo clan, the odds are against her." Luo Sanyang frowned. "Tell me where the Mo clan is," Bu Fong asked with a straight face. Luo Sanyang opened her mouth. She seemed to sense the firmness in Bu Fong's tone. She did not know what to say. Bu Fong might not understand how terrifying the Mo clan was, and even the Luo clan did not want to fight them. The people of the Mo clan were too crazy. Or rather, they were too terrifying. It was not their talent that was scary, but their will to become stronger. "Is that woman so important to you? Are you willing to offend the Mo clan?" Luo Sanyang relaxed her frown and looked at Bufang. Bufang's eyes were as dark as the night sky full of stars. He glanced at her, took a deep breath and said solemnly, "Because they are my friends." Luo Sanyang trembled, but she had no choice but to nod. "Okay, I understand." The next moment, she rubbed the spot between her brows. "You're really a troublemaker. You've just caused trouble in King Pingyang's residence, and now you're going to the Emo clan. If you keep acting like this, you'll be killed sooner or later in the Divine Dynasty," Luo Sanyang said helplessly. The experts behind Luo Sanyang were all friends that Luo Sanyang had found. With her power, it was easy for her to summon a group of friends. However, Bufang was going to the Emo clan now. Luo Sanyang could not make them stay in the restaurant, so she had to apologize and let them leave. Meanwhile, Bufang closed the restaurant's door. He stepped onto Luo Sanyang's luxurious warship. On the first day of its opening, the restaurant in the Divine Dynasty's capital did not make a single customer and closed its doors. The atmosphere in the luxurious warship was somewhat gloomy. Luo Sanyang did not say a word. She just steered the warship forward. A ripping sound rang out. The warship streaked across the sky, tearing through the sky of the capital. A rumble echoed out. The warship shook slightly. Then, it stopped and landed on the ground. It was a huge square where warships were docked, which belonged to the aristocratic families. In the Divine Dynasty's capital, warships were a means of transportation and a symbol of face. Every heir of an aristocratic family had a luxurious warship of his own. Bufang stepped out of the warship. He followed Luo Sanyang with his hands at his side. After walking around for a while, the two of them arrived in front of a mansion. The front door of the mansion was decorated magnificently. The Emo clan. Bufang's eyes narrowed slightly as he looked at the plaque in front of the door. "You and Hades' era are inside?" Bufang took a deep breath and said. Luo Sanyang nodded. "The Emo clan is hosting a banquet today for your friend. Every time they do something crazy, they will hold a grand banquet to make it look ceremonial. Although many people in the capital resent it, they are, after all, the Emo clan, and many families will give them face. Also, I have some bad news for you." Luo Sanyang looked at Bufang and said, "The fifth prince of the Divine Dynasty's capital is also in the Emo clan, and he has taken a fancy to that woman. After the Emo clan devours her curse power, he will bring her back to the imperial palace." "What do you mean?" Bufang frowned and his eyes became more and more serious. "The fifth prince is a notorious lecher in the Divine Dynasty's capital. That means your friend will not end well. Of course, if you want to save your friend, you will have to fight against the Emo clan and the fifth prince." Luo Sanyang smiled bitterly. She felt that Bufang had really gone crazy. In this kind of situation, once he tried to save someone, it would basically be a dead end. She didn't know where Bufang got his confidence from, even though Bufang had defeated the young master. However, the young master was only a demigod. Even if he was a genius demigod, he would be crushed by a mid-grade god, even if he was the top expert among mid-grade gods. Moreover, there were many high-grade gods in the Emo clan. Once Bufang stepped through the gate, he would definitely die. She didn't understand why Bufang had to do this. Bufang understood her pain. She was, after all, a member of the Luo clan, and he couldn't involve himself too much in it. So, Bufang didn't ask her to help him. "I'll save her, and you'll pick me up with a warship. The Divine Chef Temple can keep me safe, right?" Bufang asked seriously. Luo Sanyang nodded. In the Divine Chef Temple, Bufang was absolutely safe. That was all she could do. "Alright, wait for me," Bufang said. As soon as he finished speaking with hands clasped behind his back, he turned and stepped into the Emo clan's residence, his figure gradually disappearing through the gate. Luo Sanyang breathed a sigh of relief. Looking at Bufang's determined back, she suddenly regretted telling Bufang the news. She might have harmed Bufang. Perhaps she should have kept this secret in her heart from the beginning. The opening ceremony of this restaurant was really inauspicious for Bufang. However, what had already happened, so she didn't say anything more. In the Emo clan's residence, clad in his striped red and white vermilion robe, Bufang walked slowly into the hall with his hands clasped behind his back. His expression was indifferent. He was neither in a hurry nor slow, even though he knew that Hades' era and you were in danger. However, the Emo clan is holding a banquet to create a sense of ceremony, so I don't think they will deprive you of the curse so early. If she lost the power of the curse, she would fall into a state of absolute weakness, and she might even die. Of course, Bufang couldn't just stand by and watch it happen. The Emo clan's residence was full of people. All kinds of people were mingling in it. Some were the nobles of the divine dynasty, and some were the sons of aristocratic families. They were drinking and chatting with each other, talking and laughing. There was wine and food, and a rich aroma filled the air. Bufang was very inconspicuous among these people. After all, he was wearing a chef's robe, and in the eyes of the guests, he might just be a chef of the Emo clan. Of course, there were also some experts who had stayed in King Pingyang's residence, and they found Bufang somewhat familiar. However, they couldn't recognize him immediately. Bufang kept a low profile. He was here to save people, and it would be difficult for him to strike if he was too high profile. Besides, Bufang didn't plan to fight them head-on from the beginning. As she had said, the Emo clan was guarded by a high-grade god. Although Bufang could fight a mid-grade god, he could only be crushed by a high-grade god. He shuttled through the crowd. Soon, Bufang came to the backyard. It was much quieter here. It was also more convenient for Bufang to act. Of course, the point was that Bufang needed to know where you and Hades' era were. Bufang didn't dare to use his divine sense rashly, for fear of attracting attention. Frowning, Bufang pondered. Suddenly, his ears twitched. With his current strength, his hearing and eyesight had been greatly improved, so it was easy for him to hear or see anything. Some of the maids around him seemed to be discussing something shyly and timidly. Bufang listened confidently. He found that these maids seemed to be talking about a man. A very handsome man, Handsome? Bufang raised his eyebrows slightly, and his expression became a little strange. A man? Silently, he followed behind a gorgeously dressed servant girl who was swaying her hips. The maid came to a small building in front of the Emo clan. A group of maids had already gathered in front of the building. Holding melon seeds in their hands, these maids gathered at the door and peered inside. From time to time, they would smile and push each other. It was a very pleasing sight. Big sister, I heard that the Emo clan is holding a banquet today. Are there any chili strips? Can I have one for I? Don't you know about chili strips? It's the kind that is thin and long. When you put it in your mouth, it goes in and out. Oh, big sister, give I a chili strip, and I will agree to elope with you. Really? I promise with my character that I will never lie. His ears twitched. A noisy voice entered Bufang's ears. Bufang was a little surprised because he found this voice familiar. His eyebrows twitched. Hades' era? Such a crazy desire for chili strips. Apart from Era, there should be no one else. The once high and mighty Hades' era had actually fallen to deceive a group of ignorant maids? Where was this guy's moral integrity? The corners of Bufang's mouth twitched. He was still thinking about how to find Hades' era, but in the end it didn't take him much effort. Bufang suddenly hesitated, wondering if he should save this guy. Chapter 1440. Hades' era seemed to be living a comfortable life. Bufang looked at the group of beautiful maids and couldn't help but exhale. Then, he slowly walked out from behind the maids. The maidservants were startled, and they all looked at Bufang in horror. Who's there? These maids were the ones who were responsible for guarding Hades' era. Therefore, the moment they saw Bufang, the maidservants all became vigilant. Although they were maidservants, they were still guards guards of the Mo family. Hades' Era's voice came to an abrupt halt. Bufang saw Era's appearance. This guy was tied up on the bed, his freedom was restricted, and the aura on his body was also sealed. As if he had sensed a familiar aura, Hades' Era became excited. Bufang, young man? Is that you? I know it's you. You have the familiar aura of a spicy strip. Don't be shy. Come here and let I have a look. Hades' Era screamed. That made the maids even more vigilant. Could it be that this man's accomplice had come? All of a sudden, the pupils of the maids shrank. That's because they felt a terrifying power suddenly descend. It was as if a mountain was pressing down on their bodies, making it difficult for them to move. The oppressive aura made their souls tremble. Who's there? A demigod maidservant shouted. She was the leader of these maidservants. Tap, tap. The clear sound of footsteps rang out. A skinny figure clasped his hands behind his back as he walked out of the door. His speed was neither fast nor slow. The maidservant's gazes immediately turned and landed on that person. The half-god realm maid's eyes shrank. Her divine sense surged, trying to break free from Bufang's restraint. Don't mess around, Bufang said calmly. Buzz, his spiritual sense moved slightly, and like a wheel that could crush everything, it suddenly pressed down. The demigod maidservant immediately collapsed to the ground, unable to even move a finger. Bufang's divine sense was far higher than the demigod realm. All the maids in the room were the same, unable to move at all. Bufang walked over to the bed, his eyes indifferently looking at Nether King Erha, who was tied up tightly on the bed. Zhang Xian thought. The invisible divine fire appeared, and the ropes engraved with runes immediately snapped. Hades' Era quickly broke free and got up from the bed. Bufang, young man, you came at the right time. We have to save Nethery. Hades' Era shook his body and looked at Bufang solemnly. Where? Bufang narrowed his eyes. As soon as he finished speaking, Hades' Era took the lead and dashed toward the exit. Bufang followed him. The moment Bufang walked out of the room, his divine sense suddenly shook like a huge bell. Buzz, the maidservants felt as if their heads had suffered a huge blow, and they all fainted. Nether King Erha passed through the mansion at an extremely fast speed. After a while, Hades' Era brought Bufang to a room. It's here. Nethery is imprisoned here, Hades' Era said to Bufang, pointing at the room in the distance. Bufang furrowed his brows. The guard of this room was just a demigod, which was easy to deal with. Bufang walked out. Just like when he saved Era, he knocked the guard unconscious and broke into the room. However, there was no one in the room. Hades' Era followed him in, and his face changed. That's impossible. Nethery is here too. Hades' Era frowned. Could she have been taken away by the Mo family? Hades' Era murmured. That's possible. You are a cursed goddess, and you have a cursed body. The Mo family needs to deprive you of the curse power, so it's impossible that they don't value you. It's very likely that they have taken you away. Let's go straight to the banquet center, Bufang said indifferently. Since you are not here, we can only go to the banquet center to find you. The banquet center was located in the Mo family's guest house. It was the place where the Mo family held banquet. All the guests were gathered here. The guest house had a great view. It was located on the shore of a man-made lake, which sparkled. The Mo family occupied a vast area. After all, it was one of the 3 top aristocratic families in the Divine Dynasty's capital. Its wealth and power were unimaginable to ordinary people. Although Emohen, the second young master of the Mo family, was not the heir, as the head of the family's business, his cultivation talent was not as good as the heir's, but his status in the family was comparable to the heir's. Recently, Emohen was very excited because he had caught a cursed goddess. The power of the cursed goddess was very mysterious, and the curse was a strange power. Some people said that the law of curse was a top law, but others said that it could also be called the strongest law of the universe. As long as he could strip the curse power from the cursed goddess and fuse it into his own body, he would have a great chance of comprehending the law of curse. At that time, his status in the Mo family would be much higher than that of the heir of the Mo family. That was why Mo Hen held this banquet. He wanted to let all the nobles in the capital know about it. He would soon become an existence with a noble status that even surpassed that of the heir of the Mo family. Once the news got out, he would certainly become the next leader of the Mo family. Mo Hen was a very handsome man. He raised his wine glass and clinked it with the guests. Mo Hen's social circle was not that of the heirs of aristocratic families, but the second-rate children of some aristocratic families. Of course, there were also the princes of the divine dynasty's capital. Although these princes were not the crown prince, they still had power. After all, in the capital, the power of the imperial family was above everything else. This time, Mo Hen invited the fifth prince. The fifth prince had taken a fancy to the woman, but Mo Hen didn't care. All he wanted was the power in the woman. As for the woman, he didn't care. There were thousands of beautiful women in the world, so how could he offend the fifth prince for a woman? However, in his heart, he still somewhat despised the lecherous fifth prince. There were so many princes in the imperial family, but the fifth prince was the most ignorant, incompetent, and the most useless. All the other princes cultivated like crazy, in order to be able to compete with the crown prince. Only the fifth prince was obsessed with beauty, and could not extricate himself. Dong, dong, dong. On the top floor of the guest building, the bell rang. Mo Hen's face froze. He stepped onto the top floor and stood on the top floor, looking at the sparkling artificial lake. He was a little excited. What he had been looking forward to for a long time was finally about to begin. Mo Hen's cultivation talent was average, and the reason he could have his current status in the Mo family was because of his business talent. However, this kind of business talent could not be used to make a living, and it could never improve his status in the Mo family. Therefore, Mo Hen planned to find another way. While running the Mo family's business for many years, he had also been studying some other method. That was to transfer some of the power of talented people into his own body. He had spent countless source stones and manpower to study this method, and he had finally completed it. His talent was about to change, and his status was bound to rise. It was only a matter of time before he became the number one person in the Mo family. Mo Hen's eyes were full of excitement. The surrounding guests were also drinking and looking in the direction of the artificial lake. Buzz, suddenly there was a rumble. The artificial lake began to ripple. As if it had been cut open by a knife, a crack suddenly appeared in the center of the lake. The lake water, like a waterfall, poured down toward the crack, rumbling and shaking. All the guests looked at this scene in shock. This beautiful scene could make people sink into it. Boom! Under the whole artificial lake, a huge formation emerged. This array formation was carved by Mo Hen when he ordered people to construct it. He found this formation in an ancient book, a method to strip from the body of a fierce beast. It could absorb people's strength and talent to strengthen the body. Although the ancient book was vague, the formation was still very clear. No matter what, Mo Hen had to try it. Rumble soon, the water in the artificial lake began to swirl. It automatically formed a formation. The spectacular scene attracted the attention of countless people. Suddenly, in the middle of the cracked artificial lake, a cage slowly rose into the air. Everyone's eyes widened as they stared at the cage. There was a woman in the cage, a girl in a long black dress. Her hair spread out, and her eyes were cold, like a fairy above the ninth heaven, arrogant and indifferent. There was not the slightest flaw on her beautiful face. Thud! The fifth prince was so stunned that he couldn't even hold the wine glass in his hand. It fell to the ground, and the wine in the glass spilled all over the ground. Beautiful, truly too beautiful! The fifth prince was intoxicated. The surrounding guests were all stunned. In the capital of the divine dynasty, there were probably only a few women who could compare to this woman's beauty. The cage was made of ancient dark iron, which was extremely hard. Although the aura of the beautiful woman in the cage was strong, she was only a demigod. The dark iron cage sealed the power in the woman's body, making her look like an ordinary woman without the strength to truss a chicken. Emohen rushed out of the building. With one step, he rushed to the top floor. Grabbing the railing, he stared at you, who was in the center of the lake. A ferocious and longing smile appeared on his face. By the artificial lake, on the path, Hades Era and Bufang stood with their hands clasped behind their back. They stared at the center of the lake, at you, who was imprisoned in the cage. Their eyes flashed. Boom! All of a sudden, the pupils of Hades Era and Bufang shrank. In the center of the artificial lake, the array began to spin. Emohen took a step forward and smashed down like a meteor. He smashed hard in front of the cage, splashing water everywhere. His eyes were fixed on Nethery, who was in the cage. Then, the corners of his mouth curved into a cold smile. It's starting. Everything you have, the will belong to me. Emohen laughed excitedly. The array began to spin. Boom! 2 beams of black light burst out. You, who was imprisoned in the cage, was immediately covered by the black energy. A tearing pain suddenly spread through her body, and Yu's face turned very pale in an instant. Chapter 1441. A Cursed Goddess. There seemed to be flames burning in Emohen's eyes. His mind was trembling with excitement. As long as the array was activated, he would soon be able to transfer the curse power in the cursed goddess into his body and comprehend the law of curse. Since ancient times, there had been many cursed goddesses recorded in ancient book. However, every cursed goddess had a miserable fate. Some were used as cauldrons, while others were devoured by curses. It was as if they were cursed, and their fates were extremely miserable. This was all because the cursed goddesses could not master the power of curses. But he was different. Once Emohen comprehended the law of curse, his strength would continue to increase. It would not be an exaggeration to say that he would become a top genius among the younger generation, and he would even be able to compete with the crown prince. This was why he had been holding back his cultivation base and not breaking through to the god realm. He knew a lot of secrets, and becoming a demigod was the most important time to lay the foundation. Emohen was ambitious, and now, he finally had the ambition that he had been waiting for. It was the cursed goddess. He stared greedily and excitedly at the beautiful woman in the cage. The woman was beautiful, but her power was even more alluring. The deprivation was painful. You frowned, her face pale, but she clenched her teeth stubbornly and did not make a sound. The black energy, which seemed to be full of corrosive power, began to spread into Yu's body and began to erode and plunder the power in her. It felt as if her bones were being crushed inch by inch. An ordinary person would have already fainted from the pain. On the contrary, Emohen felt very comfortable. He felt as if he had fallen into a land of tenderness, feeling all kinds of small hands kneading him. The feeling was so ecstatic that he was a little intoxicated. Boom! Waves of air blasted out and rumbled in the void. Emohen could feel the mysterious curse power in the cursed goddess's body. Come on! Come on! Give me all your curse power! Emohen's face was a little ferocious. On the guest tower, everyone was watching this scene. Everyone held their breath. If Emohen really completed all this, his status in the family would be re-evaluated. Then Emohen's status in the Emo family would be re-evaluated, and his status could even surpass the Emo family's heir. Many people's eyes flashed, and their minds were filled with thoughts. No one thought that Emohen would fail. As long as no one made trouble, Emohen's method of depriving the cursed goddess of her talent and integrating it into her body was bound to succeed. After all, this was the Missouri family estate, the Emo family's territory. Who would dare to cause trouble here? Even if the heir of the Luo family and the heir of the Zhao family were here, they probably wouldn't make a move. Because if they caused trouble, it was very likely that they would be kept here. Water splashed everywhere. It was as if a monstrous wave was about to soar into the sky. Suddenly, on the guest tower, someone's gaze suddenly froze and he exclaimed. They raised their hands and pointed at the surface of the artificial lake in the distance. Many people's gazes also followed the direction of the person who cried out in alarm. There, on the surface of the lake, there was a figure walking on the wave. The current of the man-made lake was extremely turbulent, and ordinary people could not control their own bodies at all. However, the appearance of the wave walker instantly became the focus of everyone present. Why would someone appear on the Mo family's artificial lake? Who was the intruder? Everyone present was slightly dumbfounded. That figure looks familiar. Is that person crazy? Is he going to destroy Mo Hen's plan? Crazy. This is the Mo family's residence. How dare he destroy the Mo family's matter? Isn't he courting death? On the guest tower, many people were whispering to each other, discussing spiritedly. They saw that figure clearly. It was a thin young man with a head full of black hair, constantly fluttering in the majestic water vapor. His eyes were extremely sharp. He took a step out. Suddenly, he soared into the air and the waves scattered. Step by step, he resolutely walked toward the direction of the cage. Mo Hen was immersed in the joy of absorbing energy. Suddenly, he sensed a foreign aura. He opened his eyes, swept his gaze around, and saw the young man in the distance who was walking on the waves. All of a sudden, his heart suddenly became furious. How could someone dare to break into the Mo family's artificial lake without permission? Roar. It seemed to let out a roar. Mo Hen instantly crushed the jade talisman. There could be no mistakes in this ceremony. Fortunately, Mo Hen was prepared. After crushing the jade talisman, there was suddenly a sonorous sound in the Mo family's residence. Every aristocratic family was equipped with their own guard. These guards were all battle-hardened veterans with rich combat experience. Boom! The waves exploded. The whistling sound rang out. On the artificial lake, the waves were blasted to the sky. Several figures walked in the air, suddenly falling, blocking in front of the young man. They blocked the path of the thin young man, preventing him from continuing to approach Mo Hen and Yu. The atmosphere suddenly became a little strange. Many experts widened their eyes as they watched the scene unfold. Bu Fang's face was cold, without the slightest expression on his face. At a glance, he saw Yu. When he saw that Yu was actually in a cage, his heart suddenly became angry. When Yu frowned, Bu Fang's face became more and more indifferent. He walked on the waves, wanting to break the cage. No one could stop him. Boom! With one step, his figure suddenly galloped like a dragon. However, his figure was blocked by someone. The ones who stopped him were the Mo family's guards. There were 8 guards, 8 gods. Although they were only gods who had comprehended ordinary laws, their strength was enough to make a mid-grade god fear them. Mo Hen floated in the black energy pillar. His sharp eyes coldly locked on Bu Fang. No matter who you are, kill without mercy. Mo Hen shouted coldly, pointing his finger at Bu Fang. As soon as his voice rang out, the Mo family's guards made their move. 8 low-grade gods attacked at the same time. Their power was so strong that even the sky seemed to change slightly. A terrible rumble rang out like thunder. Boom! 8 spears, 8 gods. Boom! Divine power filled the sky. In an instant, 8 spears pierced through the air, shooting toward Bu Fang. The whistling sound tore through the sky like a thunderclap. The 8 guards, with cold faces, attacked at the same time. This scene caused everyone present to suck in a breath of cold air. All of them felt horrified. Some of them even had goosebumps. These well-trained guards were much more powerful than ordinary gods. The hearts of the people present palpitated. The young man who wanted to destroy the ceremony was dead for sure. How could he resist such a force? They all found that the young man's aura was only that of a demigod. How could a mere demigod resist 8 well-trained gods from aristocratic families? Soon, this demigod would bleed on the spot. The 8 spears flew at a low altitude, splashing water wherever they passed. Bufang watched indifferently. In a flash, the 8 spears seemed to have blocked all his escape routes. They wanted to kill him on the spot. Mo Hen sneered. I don't know who you are, but if you want to destroy my ceremony, you must die. Mo Hen's face was ferocious. He laughed excitedly. In the cage, Yu frowned, her face deathly pale. When she saw Bufang, she was slightly taken aback. She didn't expect to see Bufang here. Was it an illusion? No. It wasn't an illusion. Yu's dark eyes narrowed, and the dark green curse power began to emerge from her body. Slowly, it merged with Mo Hen's body in the distance. The pain drained all the blood from her face. The excitement and expectation in Mo Hen's eyes grew thicker. Of course, Bufang saw it too. Inexplicable anger rose in his heart. He took a step forward. With his body as the center, a buzzing sound spread out. The boiling and noisy lake quieted down, without the slightest ripple. Everything in the surroundings was also extremely quiet. Only the sound of the 8 spears piercing through the air could be heard. A terrifying divine sense was released from Bufang's body. The impact of this divine sense made the 8 god guards a little dazed. A clanging sound rang out. The 8 spears collided. In the time it took for a spark to fly off a flint, Bufang had blocked all 8 spears. He grabbed 4 spears with each hand. He flung them down. The spears flew backward in an instant. They rolled up the water of the lake, and turned into dragons that soared into the sky. Bufang stomped his feet on the ground and soared into the sky. He had to finish this battle quickly. He couldn't waste time. As soon as the dragon bone kitchen knife appeared in his hand, a terrible dragon roar shook heaven and earth. The kitchen knife of affliction. Bufang's aura soared. All of a sudden, he seemed to have become 10,000 feet tall. The kitchen knife slashed down. A golden knife light shot out. In a flash, the 8 gods felt their hair stand on end. They didn't dare to be careless. They all unleashed their divine power, trying to block it. However, facing this knife, the 8 gods tried to block it at the same time, but they were all sent flying backward, vomiting blood. Their bodies were covered with cuts, and they were forced to kneel in the artificial lake with their heads bowed. With a boom, the lake water rose into the sky. The 8 flying spears turned into a long dragon and suddenly descended, piercing through their bodies and nailing them to the lake. One move. The 8 gods were defeated at the same time. They were dumbfounded. On the riverbank, Hades' Era looked at the mighty Bufang and took a breath. How long has it been? How did Bufang young man's fighting prowess become so terrifying? He's a demigod, but he defeated 8 gods with one move. Is he really such a genius? On the guest tower, many experts were horrified. A demigod genius? He's a genius comparable to the heirs of aristocratic families. He defeated 8 gods with one move, but his cultivation base is only at the level of a demigod. I'm afraid even the heirs of aristocratic families can only reach this level. The experts' eyes widened in disbelief. The expressions of the experts from various families flickered. The 5th prince toyed with the jade bead in his hand. His eyes narrowed, while the old men around him closed their eyes and pondered. I know who he is. He's the chef who defeated young Master Pingyang in King Pingyang's residence. He's using his knife skills. He's a genius who comprehended the law of transmigration, the supreme law of the universe. Someone exclaimed and sucked in a cold breath as he recognized Bufang. But why did that chef come to the Mo family to cause trouble? He was lucky to escape the incident in King Pingyang's residence last time, and he was backed by the divine chef temple, so he was safe. But this time, he came alone without the divine chef temple's support. If the Mo family wanted to kill him, how could he stop them? A splashing sound rang out. Blood dyed the surface of the lake red. The 8 gods were thrown backward, bursting through the lake. Bufang stepped through the air and soared into the sky, heading straight for the cage. Emohen's eyes widened. How dare you? Even if you're a genius demigod, how dare you commit murder in the Emo family? That's a capital crime. Emohen's face was ferocious as he growled. He wanted to suppress Bufang with the might of the Emo family. The Emo family? Bufang glanced at Emohen with a straight face and twitched the corner of his mouth. He raised his hand. A black wak emerged over his palm. The black turtle constellation wak spun. Finally, Bufang grabbed it and smashed it toward Emohen's head. Chapter 1442. Bufang grabbed the black wak and instantly swung it down. His speed was extremely fast, and it whistled through the air. Emohen wanted to dodge, but he had no time to do so. The wak hit him in the face. A deafening rumble rang out. His figure was immediately sent flying out of the energy pillar by the wak. Accompanied by a whistling sound, he rapidly fell from the void and smashed into the artificial lake. Bufang held the black wak, his face indifferent. His face was expressionless as he looked at the dark iron cage that locked Nethery's body. He raised his hand and reached out to grab the iron cage. He wanted to crush the dark steel cage. However, what made Bufang surprised was that he actually didn't crush the dark steel cage. It was different from the one used to imprison Hua in King Pingyang's residence. Damn it! How dare you ruin my plan? In the artificial lake, a splashing sound rang out. Then, a figure emerged from the lake. His eyes were wide open, and they were filled with rage and madness. His face was twisted in a strange way, and blood was trickling down his face, which made him look even more ferocious. The cursed goddess is mine. Her power belongs to me. Emohen roared furiously. He was extremely unwilling to give up. The aura on his body continued to rise. He soared into the sky and charged toward Bufang. He was like a child whose toy had been taken away and was trying to get it back. Get lost! In the sky, Bufang gave Emohen an indifferent look. His divine sense came crashing down. Puff! Emohen's whole person was crushed alive, smashing down from the void. It was as if he had hit a boulder that weighed 10,000 pounds, and he could not even resist. The people around him sighed deeply. In the face of a top genius who had comprehended the law of transmigration, Emohen was too weak. After all, he was famous for his business talent in the Divine Dynasty, and his strength was indeed unflattering. Splash! In the artificial lake, Emohen climbed up and let out a crazy laugh from his mouth. At this moment, he also recognized the reality. In terms of combat power, he was indeed no match for Bufang. The difference in talent between the two of them was too great. He was a genius who had comprehended the supreme law of the universe, a lofty existence. It was not something he could compare to. But no matter how monstrous you are, you can't break this cage. Even if you break the cage, you won't be able to walk out of the Emo family. Emohen laughed, crazy and full of killing intent. The clanging sounds continued to ring out. The guards of the Emo clan came one after another. One by one, hundreds of guards, almost all the guards of the Emo clan, surrounded the man-made lake. With so many demigods and god guards working together, they formed a huge heavenly net that covered the entire sky. Bufang did not look at them. He didn't even care about them. His attention was focused on the cage. Yu's pain has lessened considerably since the formation has lost its effectiveness. She stared at Bufang with her dark eyes. Bufang nodded to Yu and said to Yu, "Step back a little." Yu immediately took a step back and pressed against the cage. Bufang's eyes narrowed. The yin and yang energy emerged on his arms. He grabbed the cage and exerted force. Immediately, the dark steel pillars of the cage were forcefully separated to the two sides. "You can't break the cage." This is not ordinary iron. This is a cage made of refined iron. You can't open it unless you have my key. Mo Hen roared wantonly. He was sneering at Bufang for overestimating his own strength. In order to prevent the cursed goddess from escaping and being taken away by someone else, he had no choice but to do so. He even did not hesitate to build a cage made of refined iron just for this moment. He was very happy to see Bufang fail. However, there was a grinding sound that made one's teeth ache. Mo Hen's pupils constricted. The cage, which was made of black iron essence, let out a creaking sound as if it couldn't bear the weight anymore. Slowly it was bent. A gap was torn open. What kind of tremendous force was this? What kind of power was this? Mo Hen's pupils constricted. The next moment, his anger surged. Stop him! Mo Hen roared. This was the first time he felt so irritable and out of control. The guards soared into the sky one after another. Among these guards there were demigods and gods. All of them unleashed their formidable strength and rushed toward Bufang, trying to stop Bufang from breaking the cage. Bufang's Taotai arm continued to exert force. The yin and yang energy in his arm circulated to the extreme, constantly moving around his arm, as if turning into a series of shadows. Rumble! A rumbling sound rang out. Cracks appeared on the dark steel cage. However, at this moment the attacks of the guards also fell. Boom! In just a flash, Bufang's figure was swallowed up by countless attacks. Dazzling light filled the sky. On the guest tower, everyone's eyes were stunned. Some people even sucked in a breath of cold air. Could it be that a monster comparable to a young master had died just like that? Mo Hen's eyes were full of madness. He was about to succeed, but a monster had come out of nowhere and destroyed it. He hated these high and mighty monsters the most. With their enviable talents, they all looked down on others. The death of a monster made Mo Hen inexplicably excited. But was Bufang really dead? The guards floated in the void, staring at the cage. All of a sudden, they saw the light being torn apart. Bufang's figure stepped out of it unscathed. In the void, Yu quietly followed behind Bufang. Her black hair fluttered, and her face was extremely beautiful. Let's go. I'll take you to kill our way out. Looking at the guards around him, Bufang gently exhaled. He swung his hand. The mysterious iron essence cage in the void whistled as it ruthlessly smashed into the ground. With a bang, it smashed into the artificial lake, splashing water everywhere. Mo Hen stared at it, his eyes full of resentment and hatred. All of you attack! Mo Hen roared crazily, looking like a crazy demon. He would not allow the opportunity that he had gotten into his hands to be given away like this. Boom! 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 One expert after another approached Bufang. After all, Bufang was just one person. Even if he was a monster demigod, he would be powerless in the face of a group of gods and demigods. Terrible divine power swept across the sky. The guests on the guest tower watched with their blood boiling. This scene was too exciting. A demigod against 100 guards. It was like an epic confrontation. Even the crown prince and the young master would not be so crazy. It was too crazy. Could Bufang really do it? Even a demigod who had mastered the supreme law of the universe would die before he grew up. In the face of so many guards, Bufang let out a long breath. He turned to look at you. Do you want to follow me or enter the heaven and earth farmland? Bufang asked faintly. Nethery's eyes flickered as she narrowed them. I'll follow you. As soon as she said that, Bufang nodded. He turned his head and faced the guards in front of him. His mind flickered, the dragon bone kitchen knife emerged. His aura began to rise. In that case, I'll take you to kill our way out. Buzz, a silver flame emerged. It floated in front of Bufang. A moment later, it turned into thousands of flames, hovering around Bufang like a fire dragon. The dragon bone kitchen knife swept out. The knife light raged along with the silver flame. Its power was infinite, and even the void was twisting. The meteor knife technique burst out. In the sky, thousands of knife lights fell like meteors. The knife light was accompanied by the flame, and its power was extremely terrifying. Boom, boom, boom. The experts resisted with all their might. However, in the face of Bufang's attack, the demigods' bodies were instantly set ablaze. They turned into flaming men and were burned to ashes. Although the gods could resist, they were forced back. It was just one move. The first wave of the Mo family's guards was defeated. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Looking at the demigod guards in the sky that looked like fireworks, they all felt a chill run down their spines. In just a flash, the number of guards decreased sharply. Only 20-some god-level guards were left in the sky, blocking Bufang. Mo Hen's body was shaking. This scene was far beyond his expectation. He knew that to deal with a monstrous demigod, the price would be great. However, he didn't expect it to be so great. Bufang glanced around. The law of transmigration emerged above his head. His pressure sword and his aura sword. As soon as the law of transmigration appeared, Bufang's fighting prowess soared. The runes of law gathered and turned into a huge vortex. It smashed out. Immediately, the god guards who had surrounded Bufang retreated. Under the power of the law of transmigration, they were all suppressed. The Taotai arm bloomed with dazzling light. Bufang's fist fell from the sky. Boom! The bodies of several deities exploded and they died miserably on the spot. The other gods fled at high speed. Even the young master of the Mo family could not withstand Bufang's yin and yang transmigration fist, let alone these low-grade gods. After repelling the guards, Bufang's body seemed to be burning with heat. He took you with him, walking step by step in the air. Gradually, they landed outside the man-made lake. One man and one punch had suppressed all the Mo family's guards. This was the power of a monstrous demigod. In the guest house, everyone sighed. The fifth prince toyed with the jade bead. Although a monstrous demigod is strong, he is, after all, just a demigod. He has too many restrictions. Does he really think that the Mo family, one of the top 3 families in the Divine Dynasty's capital, can come and go as he pleases? The corners of the fifth prince's mouth curved upward slightly as he said with a faint smile. The old man sitting beside him also slowly opened his eyes, revealing a glint in his eyes. Although Mo Hen was crazy, he had not lost his mind. He took a deep breath. The moment Bufang began his killing spree, he knew that this guy would not be able to walk out of the Mo family's residence. Once he began his killing spree, the experts in charge of the Mo family would make a move. What the aristocratic families cared about was their face. If they allowed Bufang to come and go as he pleased, they would certainly lose all their face. Rumble. Sure enough, when Bufang and Nethery landed on the shore, Bufang's eyes lit up. In the depths of the Mo family's residence, suddenly, a terrifying aura was drawn over. In the blink of an eye, several figures soared through the void, tore the sky, and emerged in midair. They were 3 old men, and behind them was a handsome young man. Their aura descended and sealed off the space around Bufang. The mid-grade gods of the Mo family had made a move. Chapter 1443. Rumble. Even the weakest mid-grade god had comprehended the power of 6 laws. It was already very difficult for a genius among demigods to fight a mid-grade god. Bufang had finally attracted the attention of the Mo family's mid-grade gods when he tore open the cage and slaughtered his enemies. 3 mid-grade gods appeared as soon as they appeared. Terrible divine pressure spread and seemed to form a sky curtain that was about to completely suppress Bufang. It was a very uncomfortable feeling. Even though Bufang's divine sense was very strong, it was still difficult for him to break through the suppression of the mid-grade gods. Hades' era sucked in a cold breath. It was the first time he felt such great terror. It was not until he came to the Divine Dynasty that he realized how weak the Netherworld was. In the face of these terrible existences, The netherworld was as weak as a speck of dust. Of course, that did not include Mu Hongzhi, who he could not see through. With a thought in his mind, Bufang took Yu and Hades' era into the heaven and earth farmland. If the mid-grade gods did not attack, Bufang might have the confidence to take them out. But once the mid-grade gods attacked, Bufang was not sure that he could guarantee the safety of Yu and Hades' era. Therefore, Bufang did not ask for Yu and Hades' era's opinion before taking them into the heaven and earth farmland. In the guest house, the experts had faint smiles on their faces. For them, the fall of a genius demigod was definitely something that could excite them. In fact, they were glad to see it happen. Usually, they were oppressed by those genius demigod. Now that they could see the fall of a genius, they were naturally very happy. Emohen looked wildly at Bufang. "You're dead. How dare you break into the Emo family's residence and kill people? No one can save you." Emohen growled wildly. He looked very embarrassed. The failure of his plan was a great blow to him. This meant that his plan to change his talent had completely failed. Even a person who was usually incomparably calm became irritable at this moment. In the sky, the three old mid-grade gods glanced at Emohen and sighed. They knew what Emohen insisted on. Emohen just wanted to change her talent and become an existence comparable to a scion. Trash! The young man beside the three old men glanced at Emohen. When he saw the latter's crazy appearance, he curled his lips in disdain and said coldly, "The three pavilion elders don't need to do anything for the time being. Leave this guy to me." The young man said. The three elders looked at each other and nodded. Then, "Crown Prince, be careful. It doesn't matter. I'd like to see how strong the genius who defeated King Pingyang's son is. The legendary law of reincarnation is so powerful." The young man let out a long roar, and the aura on his body rose steadily. His aura surged, and the power of laws surged above his head. Buzz, the young man leaped into the air and faced Bufang. Whoosh, the wind was blowing. The youth was insufferably arrogant. "I am Emotsang, the scion of the Emo family." The young man sneered, raised his hand, and aimed it at Bufang. "If you submit to me, I can spare your life," Emotsang said to Bufang with a cold smile. His heart was on fire. If he could make a genius demigod submit to him, his status and reputation in the capital would certainly soar. He might even be able to suppress geniuses like the young master. Submit? Bufang's face was indifferent. He looked at Emotsang as if he was looking at an idiot, wondering where this guy's confidence came from. Suddenly Emotsang's power of law surged. Bufang immediately felt his body become as heavy as a mountain. It was as if a towering mountain was pressing down on him. Boom! Boom! The ground under Bufang's feet collapsed in an instant. In midair, Emotsang sneered disdainfully. "The law I comprehend is the law of gravity. How can you resist a gravity that is 100 or 1,000 times stronger?" Step by step, Emotsang approached Bufang. One of his hands slapped toward Bufang from a distance. With every slap, Bufang felt the pressure on his body increase by a notch. In the distance, the experts in the guest house sucked in a cold breath. Even Emotsang had made a move. He was the heir of the Emo family, who was comparable to the young master. His mastery of the law of gravity was superb, and he could manipulate gravity 1,000 times stronger than normal. Emohen was extremely jealous. Didn't the Emo family value him because of his talent? Without talent, he Emotsang was nothing. Emohen was unwilling. He had worked hard to help the Mo family earn countless resources, but in the end, these resources fell into Motsang's hands and became the resources to cultivate him. How could he accept this? He was confident that if he had the same talent as Emotsang, he would definitely make a name for himself and dare to fight the young master. The three mid-grade gods were very satisfied with Emotsang's means. They looked at each other with smiles. Crown Prince is getting more and more proficient in using the law of gravity. Yes, Crown Prince is almost ready to break through to the God realm. Once he succeeds, he will have a good chance to become a perfected god in the future. If the Mo family can have one more perfected god, we will surely become the leader of all the aristocratic families in the divine dynasty. The hearts of the three mid-grade gods were a little agitated as they thought excitedly. Bufang's hair fluttered in the wind, and his eyes were as sharp as knives. The law of gravity? Bufang's face was expressionless. Raising his head, Bufang looked at Emotsang, who was laughing confidently in the sky. He twitched the corner of his mouth speechlessly. Even though he was carrying a gravity 1,000 times stronger than normal, Bufang was still very calm. He exhaled softly. The law of transmigration spun over his head. The runes of law enveloped his body. The terrible pressure of gravity disappeared in an instant. This was the overwhelming advantage of the supreme law of the universe over other laws. He clenched his fist. Then, Bufang's figure disappeared from where he was as if he had teleported. When he reappeared, he was already in front of Emotsang. That speed shocked Emotsang. How could you? This scene was out of everyone's expectations. They didn't expect that a gravity 1,000 times stronger than normal would have no effect on Bufang. The law of gravity? What kind of rubbish is that? Bufang said. As soon as he finished speaking, Emotsang's pupils shrank. A ripping sound rang out. Bufang clenched his Taotai arm into a fist and threw it out. A thud rang out. It hit Emotsang's abdomen without any resistance. Boom! Emotsang's eyes widened. For a moment all his thoughts were gone. The punch made him spasm all over, and he couldn't even move a finger. With a thud, he fell from the sky and hit the ground. Bufang was speechless. Is this the heir of an aristocratic family? Is he so weak? Is this guy here to be funny? Everyone present was petrified, and the faces of the three old men twitched violently. Looking at Emotsang, who had fallen to the ground and was rolling like a worm, they immediately withdrew their previous evaluation of Emotsang. How dare you? How dare you act so violently in the Mo family? Surrender now! A mid-grade god bellowed, his eyes cold. He raised his palm. Divine power swirled. It turned into a huge palm that blotted out the sky and slapped down toward Bufang. They wanted to suppress Bufang. Even though Bufang was a genius who comprehended the supreme law of the universe, they were confident that they could suppress him. After all, they were not ordinary mid-grade gods. Each of them had comprehended 9 laws of heaven and earth. Waves of air burst out. They almost crushed everything in their path. Although the heir of the Mo family was funny, it didn't affect their dignity. Bufang's face froze. In the face of the descending mid-grade god's palm, Bufang let out a long roar. Waves of air rose into the sky in an instant. He threw out the yin and yang transmigration fist. He had forcefully blown up the palm strike. Even in the face of a mid-grade god, he was not afraid at all. The old men of the Mo family flew into a rage. Then, he brazenly attacked, clashing with Bufang. Rumbling filled the air as their divine power poured out. Bufang's face was cold as he kept throwing out yin and yang transmigration fists. He could not believe that he was fighting a mid-grade god to a standstill. He was a demigod, but he was not at a disadvantage when fighting a mid-grade god. Was this the power of a top genius? All the experts who witnessed the battle sucked in their breath. Emohen, too, was filled with jealousy and horror. The 5th prince's eyes narrowed slightly. He leaned forward and said in surprise, "This chef has some strength." The old man who followed the 5th prince opened his eyes. The law of transmigration is a mysterious supreme law of the universe. It's extremely powerful, so it's not surprising that he can fight a mid-grade god. The old man said, "Hey, teacher, if I can have the help of a genius demigod, will I have a chance to fight the crown prince?" The 5th prince's eyes flickered as he thought of something. The old man glanced at him and shook his head. Fifth Prince, you don't know how terrifying the Crown Prince is. He's an absolute genius who is destined to become a god king. He might even have a chance to break through to the legendary heaven god realm. How can a mere demigod who comprehended the law of transmigration fight the Crown Prince? If the Crown Prince wants to kill him, one move is enough, the old man said disdainfully. The Fifth Prince did not take it seriously. The Fifth Prince did not mind. He just stared at Bufang and revealed a smile. If this chef can survive, I'll reluctantly give him a chance to serve me. The Fifth Prince played with the jade bead and chuckled. Rumble! The void trembled. Bufang took a step back. However, the mid-grade god opposite him took several steps back. The latter was shocked, and there was anger in his eyes. Buzz, the other two mid-grade gods also attacked, and in a flash, they surrounded Bufang. Their divine power exploded out. They gathered together, turned into a sky-blotting palm, and pressed down toward Bufang. It was going to crush Bufang. Bufang threw out a punch. The law of transmigration spread, but it could not break the palm. He was smashed down from the sky by the three old men and smashed hard on the ground. A rumbling sound rang out. The ground cracked. Get on your knees. One of the mid-grade gods from the Mo family cried out, his eyes wide. His voice was like a thunderclap that shook everyone's mind. The terrifying pressure and crushing pressure made Bufang's entire body sore and painful. Bufang's face was expressionless. He glanced at the three mid-grade gods. With a thought in his mind, he was ready to let White Tiger strike. With his current strength, if White Tiger struck, blood would flow like a river. Suddenly, outside the Mo family's residence, a fearsome aura exploded out. A graceful figure appeared in an instant. She fell from the sky. The three mid-grade gods looked up, their pupils constricting slightly. Rumble! The three mid-grade gods retreated immediately and stopped suppressing Bufang. Then, the graceful figure descended, looking very charming. Luo Sanyang? The Luo family's she-devil. How dare you interfere in the Mo family's business? The Mo family's cabinet master bellowed. His anger soared, and his aura filled the air. Bufang, on the other hand, gave Luo Sanyang a puzzled look. He did not expect her to appear and save him. I knew you couldn't stop those old fellows from the Mo family, so I came, didn't I? Are you touched? If you are, treat me to a good meal when we get out of here. Luo Sanyang, who had a graceful figure, smiled at Bufang, looking very beautiful. Chapter 1444. Luo Sanyang's appearance was beyond Bufang's expectation, as well as the Mo family and everyone else's. However, some people also realized what was going on. They knew who Bufang was. Bufang was a chef of the Divine Chef Temple, and he was a chef that the Divine Chef Temple valued very much. Since he had helped the Divine Chef Temple break the first seal, he would naturally be valued by the temple. Although Luo Sanyang was a member of the Luo family, she was the steward of the Divine Chef Temple, so she naturally cared about Bufang. It was normal for her to come here and help Bufang. However, could Luo Sanyang really save Bufang? The Mo family was, after all, a top family in the Divine Dynasty's capital. Whether it was in terms of strength or power, it was a behemoth that ordinary people could not resist. Bufang was just a demigod. Luo Sanyang was just a mid-grade god. Elders of the Mo family, can you give the Divine Chef Temple some face? Bufang is a person that the Divine Chef Temple values. If something happens to him in the Mo family, the Divine Chef Temple won't be able to explain it. I don't think the Mo family wants to ruin our relationship with the Divine Chef Temple, do you? Luo Sanyang said with a smile. She wanted to have a pleasant talk with the Mo family. Perhaps they would give the Divine Chef Temple some face. However, just as she finished speaking, the response she got was a cold snort from the three cabinet elders. The evil girl of the Luo family, do you really think the Mo family is a pushover? You came to the Mo family, killed someone, and then said not to ruin our relationship with the Divine Chef Temple, and you think you can get away with it? What do you think the Mo family is? One of the elders said with a sneer, his eyes cold. Luo Sanyang paused slightly. You want to leave? Then ask that chef to hand over the woman he saved. Mo Hen said in a hoarse voice. His eyes flashed as he stared at Bufang. As long as he absorbed the cursed goddess's talent, he would be able to surpass this damned guy and even beat him to death. He would return the humiliation Bufang had given him 100 times, 1,000 times. Luo Sanyang was silent. She knew that Bufang had come here to save that woman. Mo Hen actually wanted Bufang to hand over the woman. Obviously, it was somewhat difficult. Luo Sanyang turned to look at Bufang. However, he found that Bufang shook his head expressionlessly. Hand over you? Naturally, it was impossible. You've already lost your life, yet you still want to protect a woman? What a joke. An existence like you is not qualified to be called a monster. The mid-grade gods of the Mo clan sneered. They were a little speechless at Bufang's behavior. As a genius, he acted so stupidly. He was destined not to achieve much in the future. Mo Hen's eyes narrowed, and her whole body began to tremble. If that's the case, then go to hell. Even if I kill you, I can still capture that woman. When the time comes, I will make you suffer 1,000 times, 100 times more humiliating to that woman. Mo Hen, who was almost crazy, roared at Bufang. His words made everyone present frown involuntarily. Luo Sanyang felt a burst of disgust. Mo Hen of the Mo clan was known as a business genius, but his business dealings were naturally somewhat dark. Everyone in the capital knew that Mo Hen's actions were very dirty. However, it was still a little disgusting to show it so blatantly. Then I'll kill you. In the void, facing Mo Hen's madness, Bufang said coldly. His eyes gradually froze, and a murderous intent surged out. How dare you? You can't even protect yourself, yet you still want to commit murder. It seems that we must destroy your cultivation base, throw you into prison, and let you understand what purgatory is on earth. One of the cabinet elders bellowed. As a monstrous demigod, Bufang's talent was absolutely extraordinary. If they could extract Bufang's talent and fuse it into the body of a junior of the Mo clan, it would be a good choice. For a moment, the eyes of the 3 cabinet elders flashed as they looked at Bufang. The Mo clan's method of robbing talent was no secret in the capital. Although it was against humanity, the Mo clan had a powerful backer. Although the people in the capital hated them, they could do nothing about it. After all, the imperial concubine of the Shui divine dynasty's divine emperor was from the Mo clan. Otherwise, with the Mo clan's brutal methods, they would surely be destroyed by the various aristocratic families. Bufang did not understand what these people were planning, but he could sense their malice. Bufang raised his head and glanced at the 3 mid-grade gods, his eyes bursting with cold, killing intent. You 3 old dogs! Bufang scolded them. His voice rang out. A thunderclap rang out in the sky as if a terrible wave was tearing the sky apart. One of the cabinet elders stood across the sky and slapped his hand down at Bufang, summoning a tremendous amount of terrible divine power. Rumble! The whole world seemed to be collapsing. You people from the Mo clan are really lawless. Luo Sanyang felt helpless. The Divine Chef Temple's name was an existence that deterred everyone in the capital. Unfortunately, they had run into the Mo clan. The Mo clan's backer was the imperial concubine, so they were naturally not afraid of the Divine Chef Temple. If there was any power in the whole divine dynasty that was not afraid of the Divine Chef Temple, it would be the imperial family. Although the Mo clan was not the imperial family, they had a woman from the Mo clan as the imperial concubine, which made them a relative of the imperial family. This was also the reason why the Mo clan was so arrogant. Since they could not come to an agreement, they would fight. It was not the first time she had wanted to beat up the members of the Mo clan. Rumble. With a flip of her hand, she found one of the cabinet elders and charged at him. Although she was not a genius demigod, her talent was peerless, and her fighting prowess was not weaker than this cabinet elder. She had also comprehended the power of 9 laws, but she had not perfected them yet. Rumble. The power of the laws and divine power surged in the sky, causing thunderclaps to ring out. Heaven and earth were broken, and the void turbulence emerged. Of course, compared with the netherworld, the Xiai divine dynasty's space was much more stable, and it could not be easily torn. Although it was a fight between gods, the fluctuations did not spread. Fight! Luo Sanyang's fighting spirit was high. Her blood was boiling and her eyes flashed. Her eyes flickered with divine light. She had already found helpers, so she had nothing to fear. Bufang, on the other hand, was even more violent. He and the 2 cabinet elders fought to a draw. Heaven and earth fell silent. The law of transmigration surged, triggering Bufang's power and making Bufang's strength stronger and stronger. Surrender yourself to us. Although you are a genius, you are only a demigod after all. The Mo clan's cabinet elder sneered. Their divine power was endless, but Bufang was only a demigod, and he was using the power of his divine sense. The longer they fought, the faster he would weaken. The divine sense of the 2 mid-grade gods formed a large net. The net fell and pressed down on Bufang inch by inch, forcing Bufang to the ground. The oppressive Bufang seemed to be crushing him. In the distance, the surrounding people fell silent. Bufang's strength was enough to shock everyone. Although, theoretically, a genius demigod could fight a mid-grade god, that was basically the estimation of ordinary people. There were relatively few battles between geniuses and mid-grade god. However, this battle stunned everyone. Bufang's opponent was not an ordinary mid-grade god. Mo Hen was laughing. His eyes were full of excitement. He wanted to cripple Bufang, put Bufang in prison, seize Bufang's talent, and use it to strengthen himself. He was very excited at the thought of this. Mo Tsang got up from the ground. He was the genius demigod of the Mo clan, but he was knocked to the ground by Bufang's punch. This was a humiliation. It was an endless humiliation, an inner demon on his path of cultivation. He had to get rid of this inner demon. So, he raised his head, his eyes full of cold, killing intent. Damn it! I want you dead. Only your death can wash away the humiliation in my heart, he said coldly. He activated the law of gravity. Boom! Around his body, the entire world seemed to have become extremely heavy, and the ground seemed to have collapsed from the pressure. Mo Tsang, who was suppressing his body, suddenly released the law of gravity. His body shot forward like a spring. This method of suppressing the opponent to the extreme and then exploding it would make his speed explode to the extreme. A loud rumble rang out. The ground kept exploding. Mo Tsang had compressed the law of gravity to the extreme, compressing it into a small ball in his palm. As long as this ball exploded in Bufang's body, it would explode. Even geniuses with extraordinary fleshly bodies would be killed in an instant. The use of laws was extremely profound, not to mention his omnipresent law of gravity. In Mo Tsang's mind, his law of gravity was not weaker than the supreme laws of the universe. Boom! Boom! The void kept exploding. Like a cannonball, Mo Tsang approached abruptly and appeared in front of Bufang, who was suppressed by the divine sense of the 2 cabinet elders and could not move. Die! Mo Tsang's eyes exploded with monstrous killing intent, and they turned red. The supreme laws of the universe? Go to hell! Mo Tsang roared. Then, the energy ball of the law of gravity, which had been compressed to the extreme, smashed toward Bufang's face. Bufang, who was pressed to the ground, felt the approaching crisis. He let out a long breath. His face became extremely cold. Xiao Tian, come, he said. Kill those who deserve to be killed. All members of the Mo family should be killed, Bufang said. As soon as his voice rang out, a proud chuckle rang out in Bufang's spirit sea. Buzz Mo Tsang's killing method approached. Just when it was about to hit Bufang's face, the hearts of the two cabinet elders, who were suppressing Bufang, skipped a beat. In a flash, Bufang's black hair turned silver-white. Looking up, Bufang's silver-white pupils turned into sharp swords that tore through the sky. The law of gravity? What kind of trash dares to offend Xiaotian? Boom! It was as if an explosion had reached the sky. Bufang's aura suddenly changed dramatically. The divine sense of the two cabinet elders seemed to be torn apart by the roar of a white tiger. Their faces turned pale, and they were knocked flying backward. White-haired Bufang slowly rose to his feet. In the face of Mo Tsang's law of gravity, he held out a hand. Slash. A crisp sound rang out. The law of gravity was crushed. As for Mo Tsang, his chest had been pierced. White-haired Bufang's eyes were as sharp as swords. With an evil smile, he rested his eyes on Mo Hen, who was trembling in the distance. You're courting death, aren't you? Chapter 1445. The whole place fell silent, and everyone was dumbfounded. They stared at Bufang in disbelief. Drip. Crimson blood flowed down and dripped on the ground, creating ripples as if it had fallen into a pond. The people present didn't know what to say. They were all shocked by the scene in front of them. On the way to the reception hall, they all sucked in their breaths and shivered. He's crazy. This chef from the Divine Chef Temple is courting death. Does he think he can do whatever he wants just because he has the Divine Chef Temple as his backer? He's a madman. I'm afraid even the Divine Chef Temple can't protect him now. They all shook their heads and looked at Bufang, who now had a head full of silver hair. They sighed with emotion. If Bufang had only saved a woman, he might have survived for the sake of the Divine Chef Temple. But once Bufang killed the heir of the Mo family, it would be tantamount to completely falling out with the Mo family. Then, there would be no room for peace. Even Luo Sanyang never thought that Bufang would go so far. It was indeed crazy to kill the heir of the Mo family with one move. However, she somehow felt a little hot-blooded. Mo Tsang's eyes widened in disbelief. His body was lifted up, and he felt a sharp pain in his chest. Blood kept flowing out of his chest and dripping on the ground. He felt as if his heart had been crushed in an instant. However, he was, after all, an exceptional demigod, and his body's healing power was very strong. Even though his heart was crushed, he was still alive. The Mo family's means could save him. So, he had to escape from the madman in front of him now. He was an exceptional demigod, but in front of Bufang, he was as weak as a child and was killed in an instant. This was a huge blow to Mo Tsang. Of course, no matter how big the blow was, it was not as important as his life. All he had to do now was survive. Let go of me. Mo Tsang coughed up blood. His eyes grew sharp as he tried to break free. White-haired Bufang glanced indifferently at him. Boom! A terrifying thought suddenly shot out and hit Mo Tsang's body. Mo Tsang sensed a terrifying intent, and his spiritual consciousness felt like it was going to collapse in an instant. Blood spurted from his nose and mouth. Like a dead dog, Mo Tsang was sent flying and crashed into the distance. He was on the verge of death. After shaking off Mo Tsang, the white-haired Bufang's gaze shifted, locking onto the trembling Mo Hen in the distance. This was the person the host wanted to kill. He's courting death, white-haired Bufang shook his head. The next moment, an oppressive roar erupted from his body, and his figure disappeared on the spot as if he had teleported. When he appeared again, he was already in front of Mo Hen. Mo Hen's pupils constricted. He felt that the guy in front of him seemed to have changed into another person. He became even more ruthless. You can't kill me! Mo Hen roared. You're courting death, and you're not letting me kill you? White-haired Bufang said coldly. His silver hair fluttered in the wind, and his sword-like eyes seemed to be able to pierce through one's heart. In the distance, the mid-grade god pavilion elders, who were shocked by Bufang's sudden move, all shouted angrily. Furious, they struck out in an instant. It was as if it had crossed the vast sky. In an instant it was right next to Bufang. Evil creature! You still want to be violent? The Mo family is not a place for you to behave atrociously. The mid-grade god was extremely cold. Streams of the power of law overlapped and swept out, pressing down on the white-haired Bufang. He wanted to kill Bufang. Mo Hen was so scared that he could not move. White-haired Bufang's eyes rolled slightly. The corners of his mouth curved upward. Then, he slapped the ground with his palm. A loud bang rang out. White-haired Bufang's figure spun 360 degrees in an instant. He only spun once. Bufang's figure disappeared, and when he reappeared, he was behind the mid-grade god. A terrible chill enveloped the mid-grade god in an instant, making him feel cold all over. Damn it! The mid-grade god roared. He could not believe that his attack had missed. White-haired Bufang stuck close to the mid-grade god's body and smiled coldly. In my eyes, all of you are trash. His voice rang out. The mid-grade god's pupils constricted. Rumble! The next moment, white-haired Bufang grabbed his head and smashed it hard to the ground. With a loud bang, the ground exploded and a huge pit was formed. The pit was filled with rolling rubble. Roar! It was as if a white tiger had swooped down from the sky. In a flash, it hit the mid-grade god's body. Rumble! White-haired Bufang rose into the sky, while the mid-grade god howled miserably. This scene happened right in front of Mohen. At this moment, he felt an unprecedented fear. He had never thought that a mere demigod could be so terrifying. They were both demigods, but why was the gap between them so huge? Evil creature! The mid-grade god was in a sorry state, bleeding all over and furious. He never thought that he would be beaten so badly by a demigod. White-haired Bufang twitched the corner of his mouth as he hovered in midair. The next moment, he raised his hand like a tiger's claw, and a silver-white flame was burning in his palm. Host has finally activated the divine flame. This thing is a great killing weapon. White-haired Bufang's eyes were somewhat blurred as he stared at the silver flame. Then, he flicked his finger. A silver flame shot down like a meteor, reaching the mid-grade god in a flash. With a rumble, it pierced through his body. That mid-grade god probably didn't expect that his body would be pierced through. The power of the divine flame is invincible, and this is only the fusion of 3 laws. If 3,000 laws were fused into one flame, just a wisp of it would be enough to turn a mid-grade god like you into ashes. White-haired Bufang twitched the corner of his mouth and said disdainfully, Rumble! Of the 3 mid-grade gods, one was held back by Luo Sanyang, while the other 2 were attacking Bufang. However, one of them was seriously injured by white-haired Bufang, and the other one suddenly came to his senses and unleashed a great killing blow. However, Bufang, who was possessed by White Tiger, had completely changed his fighting style. White Tiger was in charge of killing, and Bufang's body was filled with brutal killing intent. Buzz, it was as if he was teleporting. White-haired Bufang disappeared from where he was in a flash. At this moment, his strength, speed, and fighting skills were all improved countless times. Before the mid-grade god could react, his body was hit by hundreds of attacks. After a series of fierce attacks, he was even pinned to the ground by white-haired Bufang. A terrible explosion broke out in an instant. White-haired Bufang's palm was burning with the divine flame. The mid-grade god's fleshly body was blown up in an instant. A shrill and miserable howl resounded through the entire area. Everyone was already dumbstruck. It was a battle that happened in the blink of an eye. One after another, the 2 mid-grade gods were seriously injured. The divine sense of mid-grade gods was very strong. Even if their fleshly bodies were destroyed, their souls could still escape. But how could they escape from white-haired Bufang? His eyes narrowed slightly, and a disdainful sneer flashed across his face. White-haired Bufang held a silver flame in his hand. With a flick of his finger, the flame turned into a colorful tiger and pounced on the mid-grade god's soul. The sound of biting and tearing was accompanied by a miserable howl. The mid-grade god's divine soul was destroyed in an instant. It was completely devoured by Bufang's divine flame, and his power of the law had fused with the six paths. Although some of the laws were lost, it was not a loss. When the mid-grade god finally fell, Yang Qi's eyes widened. Everyone was boiling with excitement. Dead? He's really dead. A mid-grade god of the Mo clan is dead? Good heavens! What happened? Everyone felt their hearts shrink as if a nightmare was roaring in their heads. A mid-grade god was the backbone of an aristocratic family, and the death of a mid-grade god was a major blow to the family. Especially when it was a mid-grade god like Bufang, an expert among mid-grade gods. This genius demigod is really heaven-defying. Even the young master of the Mo clan can't do this. Mo Hen was trembling all over. He looked at Bufang in horror. Bufang is dead? He was killed by that demon-like man. Is he really AF * King Chef? How could there be such a ferocious chef? Aren't all the chefs in the Divine Chef Temple so weak that they only know how to use kitchen knives? Without hesitation, Mo Hen turned, scrambled, and tried to flee. He ran wildly, trying to escape from white-haired Bufang's slaughter. White-haired Bufang withdrew his divine flame and focused his eyes. A faint sneer appeared at the corner of his mouth. Then, he stomped his foot down. The ground exploded in an instant. Like a tiger coming down the mountain, he moved as fast as lightning and approached Mo Hen. Mo Hen's whole body was shaking like a sieve. At this moment, he really regretted it. The crown prince was seriously injured, a cabinet elder was crippled, and another cabinet elder was killed. Is this the strength of a top genius demigod like the young master? I can't believe he's so ridiculous as to want to devour the talent of such an existence. Mo Hen rolled and crawled, snot and tears streaming down his face. Facing death, he really felt fear. Luo Sanyang was entangled with a mid-grade god, but she was extremely shocked. Crazy. This is too crazy. I can't believe he killed a mid-grade god. How crazy is that? She realized that she had underestimated Bufang. If he can kill even a mid-grade god, then this Bufang is probably the strongest genius demigod under the crown prince. Boom. Boom. The ground exploded again and again. Mo Hen frantically fled toward the guest tower. However, he was no match for white-haired Bufang, and he was caught up in just a flash. White-haired Bufang said nothing. The divine flame lingered over his palm. The power of the law was surging in the divine flame. Although it had devoured so many laws, the power of the law in the divine flame was disorderly. Only the rich fragments of the law floated and spread. In the sky, the divine flame suddenly turned into a tiger's claw. Mo Hen was fleeing frantically. The tiger's claw fell out of thin air. It was powerful enough to kill a mid-grade god. Once the flaming tiger's claw fell, Mo Hen would die for sure. The mid-grade god who was fighting with Luo Sanyang was furious. All the people on the guest building didn't move either. They could only watch Bufang chase after Mo Hen. The fifth prince sat on a chair in the guest tower, fiddling with a jade bead as he watched Mo Hen flee in a panic. A playful smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Teacher, please save Mo Hen. That boy is Mother's nephew after all. If I save his life, Mother will owe me a favor." The fifth prince smiled faintly. The old man opposite the fifth prince immediately opened his eyes. There was a faint divine light flashing in his eyes. "There's no need for me to do anything. This is the Mo family, and their experts will help," the old man said. As soon as his voice rang out, A clap of thunder exploded in the sky. A bolt of lightning streaked across the sky. Evil creature! You killed a pavilion master of the Mo family, and you deserve to die. Unforgivable! A voice that seemed to come from the ninth heaven resounded. The next moment in the sky, the clouds parted. Suddenly, a finger fell from the sky. It went straight for Bufang. White-haired Bufang jerked his head up. His silver hair spread out and lashed at the void. The white tiger's sword eye went straight for the finger in the sky. The flaming tiger's claw changed direction and collided with the finger. The tiger's claw collapsed at the first touch. The whole artificial lake exploded. The terrible pressure of the divine sense enveloped the whole place. It was as if a towering mountain was falling. White-haired Bufang stood still. The water of the artificial lake splashed like a heavy rain. The rain wet his face, making him look even more demonic. A high-grade god. Chapter 1446. Swoosh. The man-made lake exploded. The lake water seemed to have turned into a torrential downpour, constantly falling from the sky and splashing down. White-haired Bufang stood in the lake, letting the water pour over him. A terrible pressure pervaded the air, shocking everyone and making them feel as if a huge rock was pressing on their chests, making it difficult to breathe. A high-grade god of the Mo family? The fifth prince's eyes lit up, and he leaned back slightly in his chair. A high-grade god was the top force of a family. To be called an aristocratic family, a family must have a high-grade god. As for the three top aristocratic families, each of them was overseen by a great perfection god. Although it was only a high-grade god of the Mo family who had appeared this time, it was already very terrifying. A high-grade god was not someone that a demigod could fight. Even the crown prince could hardly fight a high-grade god. It's Mo Feng, the Mo family's high-grade god who just became one 5 years ago. Although he has just become a high-grade god, he is more than enough to deal with this boy. The old man introduced Mo Feng to the fifth prince. Basically, the imperial family had detailed records of the high-end fighting force of every aristocratic family. If the imperial family wanted to rule the whole divine dynasty, they naturally had to have absolute control. Interesting. With a high-grade god here, this chef should not be able to survive. There was a hint of regret in the fifth prince's voice. He was somewhat optimistic about Bufang. If he could be so talented even though he was only a demigod, he should be stronger than the young master when he grew up. If he could subdue Bufang, he might really be able to help him fight against the crown prince. At the thought of the crown prince, the fifth prince shuddered. Only those who had faced him would understand the terror of the crown prince. Although he, the fifth prince, was not looked upon favorably among the other princes, he had the heart to improve. He had many resources, and if he could recruit enough geniuses with his charm, it would not be impossible for him to fight against the crown prince. Everyone's attention fell on the artificial lake. Mo Hen sat on the ground with his back against the wall of the guest house, his face filled with the joy of surviving a disaster. Soon, he went crazy. "I'm not dead. I'm not dead." Mo Hen laughed crazily, and her eyes were full of excitement. "Do you think there's no one in the Mo family? Since you killed a god of the Mo family, you will die with me. You want to kill me? In your next life." Mo Hen was very rampant. He, who had survived a calamity, was rarely rampant. With the help of a high-grade god from the Mo family, he had the right to be arrogant. He knew that he didn't need to die. His hatred towards Bufang had completely erupted at this moment. His desire for Bufang's talent had reached a peak, even surpassing his desire for you. In the distance, Luo Sanyang's expression suddenly changed. In the end, the high-grade god of the Mo family was still provoked. This time it was terrible. Luo Sanyang sighed and clenched her fist. She had already crushed the jade talisman a long time ago. She didn't know where her reinforcements were, or if they could make it in time. Her silvery white hair spread out. White-haired Bufang reached out his hand and felt the water droplet. His eyes narrowed. Chi as the flames burned, the water droplets were instantly evaporated. Steam rose up and spread out, causing Bufang's figure to become a little blurry. The high-grade god of the Mo family did not show up. However, a terrible pressure pervaded the whole place. A high-grade god was so arrogant that he wanted to kill Bufang from a distance, shocking everyone present. It was quiet all around. Except for Mo Hen, who was laughing wildly, everyone was silent. Bufang was very strong. There were very few people in the demigod realm who could achieve such a feat. Unfortunately, it was too unrealistic for him to fight against an aristocratic family alone. The strength of an aristocratic family was not something a human could contend with. White-haired Bufang raised his eyes slightly, his sword-like eyes bright. "You're laughing very happily, aren't you?" Bufang glanced at Mo Hen, who was laughing wildly in the distance. At this moment, Mo Hen was in sharp contrast to his previous frightened appearance. "So what if I'm laughing? Do you dare to kill me?" Mo Hen glanced coldly at Bufang. Now that he had a backer, he had confidence. "What ability do you have to kill me in front of a high-grade god?" Mo Hen spread his hands as if taunting him. White-haired Bufang shook his head. "No wonder my host wants to kill me. Look at my annoying appearance. I'll kill anyone else. In that case, I'll kill you first. So what if you're a high-grade god? If I, Howling, want to kill someone, even a high-grade god can't stop me." White-haired Bufang grinned, revealing his canine teeth. His voice faded away. White-haired Bufang leaned forward slightly and pressed his hands on the ground like tiger claws. The next moment, he slammed his hands on the ground. A loud bang rang out. A striped tiger suddenly emerged behind white-haired Bufang. The lake water exploded and splashed in all directions. With a sudden burst of speed, he was like a beam of white light that shot out in an instant, tearing apart countless splendors. Hiss under the pressure of a high-grade god, Bufang still dauntlessly attacked. This guy is really a lunatic. A powerful lunatic was indeed terrifying. Everyone was shocked. Boom, boom. The lake water kept exploding. Bufang's speed was getting faster and faster, like a tiger galloping across the lake. "How dare you!" a furious voice rang out. The sky trembled as if thunder had exploded. Then, another energy finger smashed down from the sky. "You can't kill the members of the Mo family at will." The high-grade god was furious. Boom. The white tiger, who was galloping at full speed, came to a sudden stop, then quickly turned around. As the finger fell, the artificial lake exploded, and the terrain changed. However, amid the explosion, the white tiger pounced forward at an extremely fast speed. "Kill me? Wishful thinking." Mo Hen was still laughing. With the protection of a high-grade god, he didn't think Bufang could kill him. Boom. The fingers smashed down one by one. The divine sense of a high-grade god was very strong. When it fell, it seemed to limit Bufang's movements. However, Bufang was not affected at all. He kept moving horizontally like a bolt of lightning. The distance between Bufang and Mo Hen was closing in at a speed visible to the naked eye. No one thought that Bufang could kill someone under the pressure of a high-grade god. Genius demigods could kill people above their level because their laws were very strong. However, the strength of their bodies was too weak. Although the amplification of the laws was great, it was limited. Boom. The finger fell again. A terrible rumble rang out, setting off blasts of air, and a gale swept across the sky. "Die! Die!" Mo Hen's eyes were full of resentment. Bam! 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 One finger after another fell. The whole artificial lake was turned into ruins, and Bufang was bombarded. Water splashed in all directions. It blotted out the sky. The rolling waves were surging. All of a sudden, everything quieted down. The energy finger stopped falling. "Is he dead?" someone said. They didn't find the white-haired Bufong's aura, so they thought that Bufong had been killed by a high-grade god. The fifth prince's curiosity was piqued. The old man sitting next to him narrowed his eyes, feeling a little strange. His eyes narrowed slightly, and then he released his divine sense. Roar. In his divine sense, he sensed a multicolored white tiger roaring. The old man was startled, and his little eyes widened. You scared me to death. Boom! The void in front of Mo Hen exploded. Then, a slender arm reached out, grabbed his neck, and pressed him hard against the wall of the guest house. A loud explosion rang out. A large hole was blasted open in the wall of the guest house. The entire guest tower was trembling. How dare you! Perhaps even the high-grade god didn't expect such a thing to happen. He was surprised that Bufong was still alive under his attack. Mo Hen's eyes widened in disbelief. You? How dare you? Mo Hen trembled all over. He didn't understand why Bufong dared to kill him under the pressure of a high-grade god. White-haired Bufong's eyes narrowed slightly, and the corners of his mouth curved upward. I, howling, dare not do anything? His voice rang out. Creak. White-haired Bufong suddenly exerted force in his palm. Mo Hen's body was suddenly crushed to pieces. A boom rang out. Buzz! Mo Hen's soul soared into the sky. White-haired Bufong pointed out a finger, and a divine flame shot out. In an instant, it devoured Mo Hen's soul. Burned by the divine flame, Mo Hen's soul was incinerated. Accompanied by a miserable howl, it gradually disappeared into the void. The moment Bufong killed Mo Hen, his eyes widened. The terrible thunder rage of a high-grade god erupted. Boom! A golden figure suddenly fell from the sky. It was as if a comet had fallen to the ground. The frightening pressure caused everyone to be unable to breathe. At this moment, the entire guest house completely collapsed, crumbling inch by inch. The old man focused his eyes. He waved his hand. An invisible power of the law wrapped around the fifth prince, and he instantly moved hundreds of miles away to watch the battle from a distance. The fifth prince's mind trembled. This was the power of a high-grade god. Just by descending, it could destroy heaven and earth. Mo Fong has just become a high-grade god, so he's not very familiar with the control of his power. The limit of a high-grade god is to fuse 81 laws, but this Mo Fong has only fused 36 laws. He's just ordinary, the old man said indifferently. The fifth prince was shocked. The old man beside him was his teacher, and his strength was unfathomable. Judging from his tone, he should be stronger than Mo Fong. The expert radiating golden light made him look like a golden man. Dazzling golden light bloomed around him. Die. As a high-grade god, he couldn't believe a junior was killed right under his nose. To him, this was a form of humiliation. It was an unforgivable humiliation. Only by killing Bufong could he erase this humiliation. A golden wheel of law emerged over his head. 36 laws were condensed in it, which then gathered into a palm and smashed down toward Bufong. Of course, the main law was still the first law of a high-grade god, the law of metal. At that moment, it was as if a powerful army was riding on an armored horse, and a terrible killing intent shook heaven and earth. In the face of this palm, everyone's mind collapsed. Luo Sanyang was affected by the aftershock. She coughed up a mouthful of blood, flew backward, and smashed hard into the distance. Her charming face was filled with fear as she stared at the center of the explosion. A high-grade god is so terrifying. This kind of attack. I'm afraid Bufong is really going to die. Chapter 1447. Dead? He should be dead, right? If he's not dead after all that, that's too heaven-defying. The whole Mo family's residence seemed to have been turned into ruins, and the guest house had completely collapsed. For the Mo family, this was a huge loss. However, the Mo family could afford this kind of loss. Compared to the death of a mid-grade god and Mo Hen, this loss was nothing. A terrible aura surged in Mo Feng's eyes, and monstrous killing intent surged out of him. As a high-grade god, he couldn't believe that he had let a demigod kill his junior right under his nose. So he had to cut that demigod into 1,000 pieces. So what if he was a genius demigod? So what if he was someone valued by the Divine Chef Temple? If he offended the Mo family, even the Divine Chef Temple would have to give him an explanation. After all, the Mo family was backed by the imperial concubine. The golden wheel of law floated in midair, with the power of 36 laws hovering around it. Gods cultivated the laws. The more laws they fused with, the stronger their cultivation base would be. Of course, with so many laws, there would naturally be one that a god specialized in. That specialized law would determine a god's offensive methods, while the other laws would enhance the god's combat power. The limit of a high-grade god was the fusion of 81 laws. To be able to fuse the power of 81 laws, one's primary law was basically a top-level law. Just like the heirs of aristocratic families, they were all genius demigods. Only genius demigods had the chance to break through to the realm of perfected gods. Mo Feng floated in midair with his hands clasped behind his back. A terrible pressure kept spreading around him, causing the void to crack. A thick mist filled the air. With just one move, all the water in the artificial lake was evaporated. The terrible pressure almost startled half of the capital. Everyone stared at the center, wondering what would happen to Bufang. In fact, Bufang's achievement was enough for him to be a hero. Luo Sanyang was a little sad. Bufang had died just like that, and she was a little hesitant. Once Bufang died, it would be a great loss to the Divine Chef Temple. No one might be able to break the seal of the ancient heaven god's inheritance anymore. However, there was nothing she could do about it. Her cultivation talent was good, but her foundation was too poor. She had yet to comprehend the supreme laws and top laws of the universe. Therefore, although he was a mid-grade god, he might be able to hold back the mid-grade gods of the Mo family, but it was impossible for him to save Bufang from a high-grade god. Blood trickled down the corner of her mouth. She was so sad that she could barely breathe. The sound of something tearing through the air resounded. One after another, figures stepped on the air and arrived. In the distance, Mo Feng, the high-grade god of the Mo family, turned his eyes to the experts who had just arrived. The leader was a middle-aged man. His aura fluctuated and was incomparably terrifying. "Why are you guys so slow?" Luo Sanyang looked at these people blankly. She seemed a little angry. "Luo, stop fooling around." The middle-aged man looked at Luo Sanyang and said lightly, "So you didn't come on purpose?" Luo Sanyang's eyes narrowed, as if she had understood something. "We are from the Luo family. There is no need to start a war with the Mo family for an outsider," the middle-aged man said. Luo Sanyang pursed her lips, and a look of disappointment appeared in her eyes. "Second uncle, I'm tired." Luo Sanyang sighed. "Sister, let's go back to the family." Behind the middle-aged man, a green-robed man slowly stepped out of the void. There seemed to be energy floating in his eyes. He gave a deep look at the place where the steam was rising. "The genius Bufang, he's really strong. I really want to fight him, but he's already dead." Luo Hui sighed inwardly. As the only heir of an aristocratic family who had comprehended the supreme law of the universe, he was eager to fight experts of the same generation. However, because of his identity, he was not allowed to fight to his heart's content with those geniuses who had also comprehended the supreme law of the universe. To be honest, he was a little envious of Bufang. Although they were both kings of the same generation, Bufang was the freest king. "I'm not going back to the family. I'm going to the Divine Chef Temple." Luo Sanyang turned coldly and wanted to leave. The Luo family was here, so the Mo family would not want to keep her. After all, the Luo family had already taken a step back and did not help Bufang. Mo Feng watched indifferently as the Luo family turned to leave and did not stop them. Just like what the Luo family did, the Mo family did not want to start a war. After all, the Luo family was one of the 3 top aristocratic families. Once a war broke out, the whole capital would be shaken. Luo Sanyang turned and left, looking lonely and sad. Her graceful figure looked a little lonely and sad. Luo Hui sighed softly. Suddenly, Luo Hui frowned and looked suspiciously at the white mist hovering over the lake. The middle-aged man, who was about to leave, also frowned and let out a soft cry of surprise. Luo Sanyang trembled and turned abruptly. Mo Feng, standing with his hands clasped behind his back, took a deep breath. Impossible! With a wave of his hand, a terrible gust of wind came whistling over and blew away the white mist in an instant. The white mist dissipated. Immediately, the central image of the dried-up artificial lake was revealed. There, a figure was lying on his back, surrounded by a turtle-colored energy tortoise shell, and he was snoring rhythmically. Everyone was stunned, and then an uproar broke out. A turtle shell? Snoring? What the hell? This guy is not dead yet? Is he a cockroach? Why can't I kill him? That's a blow from a high-grade god combined with the power of 36 laws. Mo Feng found it a little unbelievable. He couldn't sense Bufang's aura, so he thought Bufang was dead. He didn't expect this guy to be sleeping in a turtle shell. Ah! A yawn rang out. The figure lying in the turtle shell sat up, his dark green hair waving in the air. Everyone had a strange look on their faces. Why did his hair color change again? Before, the silver-haired Bufang had an evil and ferocious air about him. But now, the green-haired Bufang gave people the feeling of laziness. Could a person's temperament change so much? The green-haired Bufang staggered to his feet. He staggered, lost his balance, and fell to the ground again. Ah! He yawned again. What kind of King yawn was this? Everyone present seemed to have been infected. They subconsciously opened their mouths and yawned. This time, the green-haired Bufang stood firm. Mo Feng's face was livid. He felt a burning pain on his face. This Bufang, who had killed 2 men from the Mo family, was still unscathed. Why was he unscathed? Why couldn't his law attack kill him? There was a surge of anger in his heart. Once again, Mo Feng disappeared from where he was as if he had teleported. Boom! He punched out and smashed the dark green turtle shell. It was as if ripples were spreading out. The punch of a high-grade god failed to break Bufang's defense. This time, not only Bufang, but all the people present were dumbfounded. Luo Sanyang's eyes lit up. She didn't expect that Bufang was still alive. Second uncle, can you do it now? Luo Sanyang looked hopefully at the middle-aged man. However, he just shook his head. His answer made Luo Sanyang's heart go cold. Second uncle. Luo, you have to put the family first. Outsiders are outsiders after all. The middle-aged man gave her a meaningful look. His gaze made Luo Sanyang's heart tremble. Mo Feng withdrew his fist and narrowed his eyes as he looked at the turtle shell that was very close to him. He sensed a strange power from it, which was a bit like the power of the law. Didn't this chef comprehend the law of transmigration? Is the law of transmigration so strong? No. This Bufang comprehended the law of transmigration. Mo Feng narrowed his eyes. Hit me, green-haired Bufang said sleepily. His infuriating look made the people around him twitch their mouth. What a lunatic! I've never seen anyone so infuriating. Didn't you eat? Why are you so weak like a girl? Said green-haired Bufang. Mo Feng focused his eyes, and a terrible killing intent swept out. You're courting death. He stomped his foot. The golden wheel of law emerged again, and the 36 laws floated around it. A terrible pressure tore the sky apart as if purple lightning was surging. The power of thousands of laws spread over his fist. Mo Feng's fist smashed down hard. Go to hell! Mo Feng roared. The attack, which contained 36 laws, poured out in an instant. It was a terrible bombardment. It could destroy heaven and earth. Blasts exploded, and dazzling golden light shone. It was like the roar of a mighty army. With a wave of his hand, the middle-aged man's defense emerged and blocked the blasts. Under the old man's protection, the fifth prince was unscathed. As for the others, they tumbled and crawled as they were sent flying. Even a high-grade god would have to spend some effort to resist such an attack, wouldn't it? Everyone sucked in a cold breath. Infuriating? Now he's really being beaten. Everyone's eyes widened, and they couldn't wait to look at the center of the lake. The next moment, their pupils constricted. They found that the dark green turtle shell in the center of the lake had turned as black as ink. Oh, what's going on? The turtle shell hasn't cracked after taking such a blow? This demigod is really heaven-defying. Mo Feng's pupils constricted. He suddenly had a bad feeling in his heart. Buzz, the top of the turtle shell cracked, and a figure slowly emerged. Sitting on the top of the turtle shell, the figure yawned and looked at him. "Did you have a good time?" the green-haired Bufang asked. "Good? I want you dead." Mo Feng's eyes were cold. He took a step forward and appeared in front of Bufang in a flash. Then, he slapped down with his palm. The void shattered inch by inch. A terrible gust of wind blew at Bufang's hair. Bufang looked at the palm lazily. "Young people nowadays are really hot-tempered," the green-haired Bufang said faintly. The next moment, his body sank into the turtle shell. Mo Feng's palm slapped the turtle shell with a rumble. Cracked cracks appeared on the turtle shell. A look of joy appeared on Mo Feng's face. No matter how hard your turtle shell is, it will crack under the attack of a high-grade god like Mo Feng. Suddenly, Mo Feng's face began to tremble violently. He felt as if his palm had hit a scorching hot spot. An extremely frightening attack surged out from the tortoise shell. What the hell? Boom! With a loud explosion, the turtle shell exploded. A terrible fluctuation spread out in an instant, as if the energy that had been suppressed for a long time was released in an instant. That instantaneous explosion was enough to destroy heaven and earth. Mo Feng was hit by the explosive force and flew backward like a cannonball, smashing hard on the ground in the distance. His face was covered in dust and dirt, and he looked extremely miserable. It was very powerful, but it could not hurt a high-grade god. Amid the explosion, the green-haired Bufang's hair had returned to its black color. "Little host, a high-grade god is a high-grade god after all." The rebound force of the turtle shell hit him in the face and disgusted him. "We won't lose anything. We can run now," the black turtle's old voice rang in Bufang's mind. Expressionless, Bufang looked at the furious Mo Feng, who was slowly climbing to his feet in the flames of the explosion. A high-grade god? The corner of Bufang's mouth curved upward slightly. "It's not enough to hit him in the face." Bufang's feet touched the ground, and his figure soared into the sky. Bufang raised his hand, his indifferent voice echoing through the void. "Wok come." The black turtle constellation Wok appeared. "Knife come." The dragon bone kitchen knife appeared in his hand. "Stove come." The belt soared into the sky, bursting with dazzling light. Bufang's eyes shone brightly. With a thought in his mind, his divine sense surged. Ingredients surging with terrible fluctuations emerged one after another. Under the watchful eyes of so many people, Bufang was going to cook at this moment? What the hell? Chapter 1448. A pot, a knife, a stove. Young man, you're putting on an act. The black tortoise was speechless. Then, it fell silent. Since the little host wanted to stir up trouble, then let the little host continue. If he didn't stir up trouble, how was he different from a salted fish? Although he wanted little host to show off and run away. However, since the little host wanted to make it big, he naturally agreed. Looking at Bufang, who was floating in the void, everyone was dumbstruck. Wok, knife, stove, was Bufang planning to cook? At such a serious time, you actually chose to cook? Could cooking increase one's combat prowess and allow one to counterattack a high-grade god? It shouldn't be possible, right? He had never heard of a chef being able to unleash heaven-defying fighting prowess while cooking in a battle. Trying to mystify us. You're just a chef, I'll definitely twist your head off, Emofeng said coldly. He got up from the ground and patted the dust off his body. His face was gloomy. He was actually humiliated by a demigod. It was like the face of a high-grade god. But now, this chef actually wanted to cook in front of him. He really didn't put him, Emofeng, in his eyes. He let out a long roar. Emofeng's aura rose steadily. The terrifying aura was like a raging flame, distorting the heavens and earth. In the distance, the fifth prince shook his head regretfully. I thought this Bufang is a smart man. He had such a good opportunity just now, but he didn't run away. If he had taken the opportunity to run to the divine chef temple, Emofeng wouldn't have dared to act presumptuously there, and his life would have been spared. But now, he has used all his trump cards and cooked on the spot. Is he trying to maintain the dignity of a chef even if he dies? Such a foolish person is not worthy of being my follower, the fifth prince said coldly. He was the son of destiny, the fifth prince of the Xiai divine dynasty, so his followers must be smart. In the sky, all eyes were on Bufang's cooking. The corner of Bufang's mouth twitched. Looking at the ingredients hovering in the air, he could feel a majestic aura emanating from them. As his cultivation increased, the grade of the ingredients grown in the heaven and earth farmland also increased a lot. He flipped his hand. A steaming fortune flatbread appeared in his hand. He grabbed the fortune flatbread and took a bite. With a gulp, he swallowed the fortune flatbread. Bufang's divine sense became more and more stagnant. Let's see if you can win the lottery. The corner of Bufang's mouth twitched. With a thought, the dragon bone kitchen knife began to spin. The kitchen knife of affliction took only a breath to process all the ingredient. With a flick of his finger, divine fire surged, burning fiercely like fire. The scorching heat caused the black turtle constellation wok to turn red in an instant. Tossing the wok and stir-frying, Bufang even simulated the wok-tossing technique of troubled times. A rich aroma immediately gushed out from the sky. Chi-chi-chi. The fragrance soared into the sky and surged continuously. Pieces of cabbage, pieces of spirit beast meat, oil splashed everywhere, soup scattered everywhere. As the fragrance spread out, many people were mesmerized. Was this the aroma of a dish cooked by a spirit divine chef? Underneath, Luo Sanyang's eyes widened. As someone who dealt with divine chefs every day, she was very sensitive to the aroma of dishes. Even the dishes cooked by an earth divine chef should taste like this, right? Rumble. The wok continued to toss, and with each toss, the aroma grew thicker. Although the wok-tossing art of affliction was simulated and not the real wok-tossing art, it was still able to increase the quality of the dish. With a thought, a dried pot floated out of his hand. With a flick of his finger, the divine flame containing the rich power of the law went into the dried pot and began to burn fiercely. The dish was poured into the pot and thick juice splashed everywhere. Rumble, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. The air above the dish was twisting. Terrible energy fluctuations burst out of the dried pot. What is this? Everyone was dumbfounded and horrified. The aroma was secondary. Why was the energy fluctuation so intense? After cooking, the corners of Bufang's mouth curved upward. A fortune flatbread appeared in his hand, and he stuffed it into the dried pot. Bufang admired his dish with satisfaction. It smelled so good that he couldn't help but want to take a bite. However, this perishing pot couldn't be eaten casually. Bufang's mind flickered. The law of transmigration emerged over his head. Buzz, the wheel of law emerged. The pressure of the law spread in an instant. Everyone present was dumbstruck. Luo Hui, who was standing next to Luo Sanyang, widened his eyes in disbelief. Impossible! His law of transmigration. How could it be a perfect law? If it's a perfect law, why hasn't he broken through to the God realm? It doesn't make sense. Luo Hui shook his head, unable to believe it. Naturally, Luo Hui had no idea what was going on. Bu Fang, on the other hand, raised his brows in surprise. Looks like I'm in luck. The corner of Bu Fang's mouth twitched. His mind flickered. The perfect law of transmigration immediately spread into the perishing pot. Bu Fang was very satisfied. Although he was a little confused by the perfect law of transmigration, Bu Fang didn't care. Dazzling silver light burst out from the dried pot and blossomed into a myriad of dazzling and piercing splendor. Rumble, a strange energy fluctuation erupted, making everyone's heart palpitate. However, was this Bu Fang's final trump card? Was this a joke? Was he trying to kill a high-grade god with a dried pot? Was he AF** King retard? The people around them were speechless, and did not know whether to laugh or cry. No matter how strong a chef was, there was a limit to his strength. If a chef's dishes could have terrible destructive power, wouldn't that make him an extremely terrifying existence? Luo Sanyang didn't know what to say. Sure enough, not saving him was the right choice. This guy has a hole in his head. The corner of the middle-aged man's mouth twitched. However, Luo Hui had a different feeling in his heart. The perfect law of transmigration? The supreme laws of the universe were not simple. Bu Fang's trick was definitely not an ordinary one. Whoosh, in midair, Bu Fang exhaled. In his hand there was a ball of dazzling silver light. You're done cooking? Mo Feng looked mockingly at Bu Fang, a disdainful sneer on his face. Do you think cooking can save you? Mo Feng's aura reached its peak. 36 laws rumbled in the void, and the golden wheel of law spun as if to crush everything. Step by step, he rose into the air and hovered in midair. The whole world was rumbling. At this moment, Mo Feng's figure seemed to have transformed into a giant that could support the heavens and the earth. Bu Fang's black hair waved in the wind as he looked indifferently at Mo Feng. Bu Fang didn't know if the upgraded perishing pot in his hand could hurt a high-grade god, but he was looking forward to it. It had fused with the perfect law of transmigration, the will of the great path, and the power of the divine flame. This was Bu Fang's strongest trick so far. Of course, unless Bu Fang crushed the god of cooking's divine power liquid drop. However, he felt that there was no need to crush the divine power liquid drop. After all, he only had one divine power liquid drop left, and he couldn't use it unless he was in a desperate situation. Are you done cooking? Mo Feng looked at him coldly. Then you can die now. Mo Feng opened his mouth and let out a long roar. His body burst into a dazzling golden light. At this moment, he had completely destroyed the power of a high-grade god to its limit. Rumble! The golden wheel of law spun and was thrown out. It crushed the void, and as it passed by, the void actually began to shatter continuously in the sky. It was as if thousands of soldiers and horses were galloping, and the law of metal rumbled through heaven and earth at this moment. This kind of killing method was extremely terrifying. The explosion of this move shocked the whole capital. It shocked the whole Divine Dynasty's capital. At this moment, the capital of the Divine Dynasty shone brightly. Everyone turned to look in the direction of the Mo family, their eyes filled with disbelief. In King Pingyang's residence, the young master, who was sitting cross-legged and cultivating, widened his eyes. He frowned and looked at the sky. Experts from various aristocratic families and kings' residences also widened their eyes. How long had it been since a high-grade god made a move in the Divine Dynasty's capital? Roar! His roar shook the sky and destroyed heaven and earth. All the experts below the high-grade god realm felt their hearts palpitate and couldn't move. It was too terrible. It was hard to imagine how pitiful Bufang would be when facing such a mighty force. Luo Sanyang's face was pale. She looked anxiously at the middle-aged man next to her. Second uncle. An anxious look came over her charming face, and she wanted to ask for help. However, the middle-aged man still shook his head. He was determined not to make a move. Bufang's expression remained unchanged. He looked indifferently at Mo Feng, who was walking toward him step by step and sealing off the void around him. This time Mo Feng was really going to kill him. He did not hesitate to cause an earthquake in the entire Divine Dynasty's capital. When a high-grade god made a move, it would indeed cause an earthquake in the capital. In that case, Bufang glanced at the silver perishing pot in his hand. They seem to be looking down on you. Don't let me down, Bufang murmured softly. The next moment, he looked up at Mo Feng in the distance. Their gazes approached each other in the void. Then Bufang threw it out casually. The silver perishing pot flew slowly toward Mo Feng like a star. A dried pot? How ridiculous! Mo Feng laughed wantonly. He was furious. The old man was killed, Mo Hen was killed, and the crown prince was crippled. The chef in front of him had completely trampled on their faces. If the experts of the Mo family returned and found out about this, they would probably curse him to death. Therefore, he had to kill this chef on the spot. He would take his head to appease the Mo family's anger. It was just a dried pot. Mo Feng sneered. He raised his hand and slapped at the perishing pot. In the blink of an eye, the silver dried pot was slapped by Mo Feng's palm. Mo Feng's expression suddenly changed, and his cheeks began to shake violently. His whole body was shaking. This, Mo Feng opened his mouth, wanting to say something. However, rumble. An explosion rang out. A terrible silver flame burst out in an instant. Boundless energy exploded and engulfed his body in an instant. Countless streams of energy poured out from all directions. A huge mushroom cloud erupted, as if to wipe out the entire Mo family. Heavens! What's going on? This explosion. This power. Damn it, run. All the onlookers were going crazy. Like a madman, he flew in all directions and fled in a sorry state. The fifth prince's eyes widened in horror. That kind of power made his heart palpitate and his whole body tremble. Run. The old man's expression changed dramatically. He wrapped the fifth prince's body with energy and fled in a flash. In just a flash they had disappeared. The power of this explosion was comparable to the full blow of a high-grade god who had fused 50 laws. This power. It was simply abnormal. Boom. Boom. The Mo family's residence exploded, and everything was falling apart. The second uncle of the Luo family hurriedly released his energy to wrap Luo Sanyang and Luo Hui. All of a sudden, a figure appeared in front of Luo Sanyang as if he had teleported. Go! Bufang glanced at Luo Sanyang and asked indifferently. Luo Sanyang was still in shock. Hearing Bufang's question, she narrowed her eyes with joy. She turned to look at the destructive explosion that was still spreading. She nodded without hesitation. If I don't leave now, when will I? I can't believe a dish has such power. Is this Bufang's trump card? Bufang nodded expressionlessly and glanced at Luo Hui and the middle-aged man. Then, flaming wings emerged on the back of his vermilion robe, and he took Luo Sanyang away in a flash, flying out of the Mo family's residence. Luo Sanyang whistled, and a luxurious warship sped toward them. Bufang and Luo Sanyang got into it. Then, the luxurious warship turned into a beam of light and disappeared into the horizon. Luo Hui's face froze and then his face twitched. Damn it! Let go of my sister! The middle-aged man was also confused. What happened? Inside the warship, Bufang closed his eyes. Luo Sanyang was so excited that her mind was trembling as she controlled the warship. Running away after showing off. How exciting! Chapter 1449. All of a sudden, a terrible explosion rang out. It was as if a strengthened nuclear bomb had been dropped, turning the entire MO residence into ruins in a flash. At this moment, countless houses were instantly destroyed by the terrifying explosion. A mushroom cloud appeared, filled with terrifying explosive energy. It kept rumbling and spreading. The MO family was shocked. The aristocratic families were shocked as well. The whole divine dynasty was shaken. At this moment, a mushroom cloud soared into the sky, attracting everyone's attention and eyes like the moonlight in the dark night. Boom! Boom! An explosion of this level was not allowed in the divine dynasty's capital, mainly because the tremors caused by it were too terrible, and it would be a devastating disaster for the entire capital. Therefore, when the explosion occurred, everyone raised their heads in shock. The experts guarding the capital soared into the sky as well, unleashing their energy to stabilize the swaying skyscrapers. The fluctuation was comparable to the full power of a high-grade god who had condensed 50 laws. It was extremely terrifying. The destructive power of high-grade gods was extremely amazing, so it was forbidden for them to make a move in the capital. But this time, something like this had happened. Rumble, the explosive energy slowly dissipated and spread out in all directions. The second uncle of the Luo family was dumbfounded. I can't believe that demigod has such a trick. Is he still a demigod? Luo Hui, the genius demigod of the Luo family, suffered a mental blow at this moment. He never thought that Bu Fang's strength could reach such a level. He was also a demigod, but in Bu Fang's hands, he would be crushed to pieces in an instant. His confidence was shattered. The explosion was stopped. After all, this was the MO residence, and it was in the capital. A few whistling sounds rang out as the high-grade god struck, compressing the terrible explosive power to the extreme. Swoosh, although the explosion had disappeared, the MO residence had been reduced to ruins. The members of the MO family had all fled. Looking at the ruined residence from a distance, they were all dumbfounded. Mo Tsung's face was pale. He was not dead, but he was on the verge of death. Mo Tsung's face was pale. He wasn't dead, but he was on the verge of death. With the help of his clansmen, he looked at the ruined mansion and his heart kept twitching. He had wanted to compete with Bu Fang, but now he realized how stupid he was. No wonder he was a demigod who could defeat the young master. If Bu Fang had used this method earlier, he would have been crushed into dregs in an instant. Mo Tsung took a deep breath and immediately felt a stabbing pain in his chest. It was a wave of lingering fear. He was really lucky that he didn't die. Demigod. Apart from the crown prince, who else could be so strong? There was a loud explosion. In the ruins of the Mo clan, a disheveled figure crawled out from the ruins. A terrifying aura filled the air, shaking the heavens and earth. The oppressive aura seemed to want to destroy everything. Mo Feng's appearance was very miserable. His face was a bloody mess, and there was a big hole in his chest. He looked as if he was going to die at any time. If it weren't for the terrible aura fluctuating in him, many people would have thought he couldn't hold on any longer. But that was normal. After all, he was a high-grade god. Although he had just stepped into the realm, once he became a high-grade god, his life level would be improved. He wouldn't die so easily. As the injuries on his body slowly healed, Mo Feng took a deep breath. Damn you! Even if you hide in the divine chef temple, I won't let you go. You killed members of the Mo family and destroyed my family. This enmity is irreconcilable. Mo Feng let out a long roar. The terrifying sound waves seemed to be able to cause the surrounding heaven and earth to explode. In the sky, the few high-grade gods shrouded in light watched with meaningful looks in their eyes. They didn't expect that Mo Feng, a high-grade god, would be so miserable by a demigod. He was indeed a little pitiful. Rumble. Mo Feng took a step and soared into the sky. His eyes shot out like pillars, looking straight into the distance as if he could see through heaven and earth and see through everything. You want to run? I'll kill you no matter where you go. Mo Fong growled. With a thought in his mind, the void split open. A golden warship floated out of it, with an intricate Mo character carved on its surface. It was the Mo family's warship. Mo Fong stepped into the warship. The warship's array rotated at high speed, and streams of light burst out of its bottom. Then, it tore through heaven and earth and sped toward the distance. Soon, it was chasing after a warship. They're still chasing? The experts of the Luo family paused. Luo Hui's expression flickered. Second uncle, my sister is still in that warship. The second uncle's eyes narrowed. She should be fine. As long as they enter the Divine Chef Temple's territory, Mo Fong won't be able to do anything. The Mo family is arrogant, but they're still a little weaker than the Divine Chef Temple. In the distant horizon, the fifth prince looked at the destroyed Mo family with lingering fear. The whole place had been reduced to ruins and turned into a huge pit. The impact was tremendous. Teacher, are all chefs nowadays so heaven-defying? I can't believe a dish can unleash such power and seriously injure a high-grade god. The fifth prince swallowed. Bufang's means had refreshed his worldview. I've never seen a chef with such means. This is the first time I've seen a dish used as an offensive means. The old man's face was trembling, and he didn't know what to say. Ha ha! Teacher, this is the man I'm looking for. If I can use this kind of means, I might really be able to fight the crown prince. The fifth prince's eyes lit up. If the power of one dried pot was already so terrifying, what if hundreds or thousands of them exploded at the same time? That power would certainly destroy heaven and earth. The more he thought about it, the more excited he became. He suddenly looked forward to having Bufang as his subordinate. He believed that with his status and charm, Bufang would surely submit to him. He was so excited that he wanted to roar. Your Highness, Mo Fong is now angry out of humiliation. Whether that chef can survive is still a question. Looking at the excited fifth prince, the old man couldn't help but remind him. The fifth prince waved his hand. He motioned for the old man to bring him along. Inside the luxurious warship, sitting cross-legged, Bufang rubbed the spot between his eyebrows. The strengthened perishing pot had consumed a lot of Bufang's energy. It made Bufang feel that his divine sense was somewhat depleted. However, his spirit sea was so strong that he recovered in a flash. Luo Sanyang stared at Bufang in amazement like a curious baby. Her beautiful face was full of curiosity and the desire to know more. Bufang opened his eyes and glanced indifferently at her. What did you throw out just now? A dish? How could it be so powerful? Luo Sanyang asked impatiently. Bufang exhaled softly. He knew she would be curious. It's called a perishing pot. It tastes good. Do you want one? Bufang's words startled Luo Sanyang. She shook her head quickly. A pot? What a joke. Even a high-grade god was almost killed by a pot. If she were to join in, she would probably be fried to a crisp without leaving any bones behind. The corner of Bufang's mouth twitched. That dish is fused with the will of the Great Path, my law of transmigration, and many other means. It's the strongest attack I can unleash so far. Bufang was telling the truth. Luo Sanyang nodded like a chick pecking at rice. The chef in front of her was really full of miracles. The first time she saw him was in the Divine Chef Temple, when Bufang fought Master Qing. She never thought that this chef would have such a powerful means. It's a pity. Although it's powerful, it can't kill Mo Fong. Bufang said with some regret. Luo Sanyang was taken aback. You want to kill a high-grade god? You should be content. High-grade gods are known as superior beings. Their fleshly bodies are almost immortal, and they can live for a long time. If they don't suffer any diseases or disasters, they can live for 100,000 years. They can't be killed so easily. Luo Sanyang did not know whether to laugh or cry. She felt that Bufang's ambition was a little too big. He was only a demigod, and yet he wanted to kill a high-grade god. Oh! Suddenly Bufang furrowed his brows. Luo Sanyang's expression flickered. She waved her hand and a light screen emerged in front of her. The light screen showed the scene outside the warship. There, a golden warship was speeding toward them at high speed. That is, Bufang paused. It's the Mo family's warship. Luo Sanyang's face turned pale. Mo Feng is catching up. I can't believe he caught up so quickly. Sure enough, it's exciting to run away after showing off, but the premise is that you can run away. I can't. My warship is a comfortable commercial warship. It's no match for Mo Feng's combat warship in terms of speed. Luo Sanyang was close to despair. As she felt the distance between them getting closer and closer, she felt gloomy. She knew that if they could get into the Divine Chef Temple's range, they should be safe. But according to the current situation, they could not get into the Divine Chef Temple's range at all. What should I do? Luo Sanyang was at a loss. Seeing Luo Sanyang's expression, Bufang frowned. As he watched the distance between them getting smaller and smaller, an idea came to his mind. Let me do it, Bufang said. Luo Sanyang paused. What are you doing? I'll drive. Bufang rubbed his hands, eager to try. Luo Sanyang was speechless. Was it a question of who was driving the warship now? The gap between the warships could not be made up by piloting. Have you ever driven a warship? Do you know how big the gap is between our warships and the Mo families? Luo Sanyang sighed. I've driven one. The corner of Bufang's mouth curved upward. The warship he borrowed from the Misty Mountain Bandits was very powerful. Mo Feng's warship approached at high speed, closing the distance in an instant. Luo Sanyang gave the driver's seat to Bufang. Bufang sat on the chair, pleased with himself. The feeling of a luxurious warship was different. The comfort of the seat made Bufang feel a little sleepy. He reached out a hand and pressed it on the warship's operating array. Buzz, the array lit up in an instant. Bufang's divine sense surged, and his eyes burst into a dazzling golden light. The gap between the warships? Isn't it just the gap between the arrays? The corner of Bufang's mouth twitched. His divine sense surged, and he began to draw an array. The explosion gourmet array was drawn by Bufang. Boom! The next moment, in Luo Sanyang's eyes, the array flashed with a dazzling light. Huh? Luo Sanyang paused. Sit tight. Bufang reminded Luo Sanyang without turning his head. As soon as he finished speaking, old driver, come online. There was a loud bang. The stern of the warship suddenly exploded. Terrible airwaves seemed to have exploded, and arc-shaped airwaves kept rushing forward. In an instant, the warship's speed increased several times, and it shot forward. Mo Feng stood at the bow of the warship, looking at the approaching warship. His eyes flashed fiercely. How could a shabby warship outrun the Mo family's warship? If it weren't for the fact that the Divine Dynasty forbade high-grade gods from flying around, he would have caught up with it. Closer! Closer! I'll soon be able to twist that boy's head off. All of a sudden Mo Feng's eyes narrowed. A blast of airwaves suddenly erupted from Luo Sanyang's warship. Bam! It was like a fart that had been held back for a long time had suddenly erupted. The warship darted forward in an instant, putting some distance between them. Mo Feng was speechless. Chapter 1450. Ah! Luo Sanyang screamed. Sitting on the chair, she suddenly felt her back suddenly lean against the chair. The strong push made her suck in a breath of cold air, and the skin all over her body tensed up. This is still my warship? Impossible. Such explosive power and speed. How could it be her warship that focuses on comfort? Can the operation really change so much? Luo Sanyang took a deep breath. Sitting in a chair, Bufang watched the images flashing in front of him. The corners of his mouth curved upward slightly. The capital of the Divine Dynasty was full of high-rise buildings, and the warship was shuttling back and forth at an incredible speed. It flew in an arc and disappeared in a flash. Although the explosion gourmet array had been drawn into the warship's array, it strengthened the warship's instantaneous explosive power, but it still could not last long enough. Therefore, after sailing for a while, the distance between them and Mo Feng's warship was shortened again. Mo Feng stood at the bow. He fixed his eyes on Bufang. A last-ditch struggle, huh? A cold smile brushed the corner of Mo Feng's mouth. The blood in his heart began to boil. He did not dare to make a move in the Divine Dynasty's capital. However, he knew very well that after Bufang used that killing method, he was in a state of deficit and should not be able to fight anymore. As long as he caught up with him, he could easily twist the boy's head off. It would not attract the attention of the Divine Dynasty's law enforcers, killing two birds with one stone. The distance between the warship and Mo Feng was getting closer and closer. The Mo family's warship was a warship that specialized in conquering the great world. Whether in performance or speed, it was far superior to the comfortable warship used by the little girl of the Luo family. So, he was not in a hurry at all. He was like a cat catching a mouse. The warship was getting closer. Mo Feng raised his hand, ready to strike down Luo Sanyang's warship. Suddenly, the warship that was being pulled closer let out another roar. It was as if a fart that had been held back for a long time had erupted once again. Puff! Waves of air swept out and the warship sped away in an instant. The distance between Mo Feng and the warship was widened again. Mo Feng was speechless. Well, Mo Feng calmed himself down and continued to wait. Once again, the warship closed in with a bang, the distance between them widened once more. Mo Feng. He was furious. He was furious to the extreme. Mo Feng was furious. Was this a joke? Is it fun? Over and over again, did they really think he had no temper? Mo Feng glanced at the skyscrapers that were gradually disappearing into the distance. The next moment, there was a long howl. He stepped on the warship and immediately soared into the sky. He turned into a beam of light and flew toward Luo Sanyang's warship. In fact, if a high-grade god went all out, his speed would be even faster than the warship's top speed. Mo Feng raised his hand and grabbed at Luo Sanyang's warship. Inside the luxurious warship, Luo Sanyang's face was pale. She covered her red lips. She never thought that she would get seasick. Every time the warship sped up, it was filled with excitement, causing her heart to contract and the pores all over her body to open up. The strong feeling of pushing her back and the instantaneous turn caused her to involuntarily clamp her legs together and let out a series of screams. Mo Feng has abandoned his warship and made his move, Luo Sanyang said, covering her little mouth and widening her eyes. Through the projection array, Bufang also saw Mo Feng's ferocious-looking face, but his face was calm. Below the Divine Dynasty, the warships speeding across the sky naturally caused chaos in the Divine Dynasty's traffic. As the warship sped past, it was like a streak of light, causing many people who were driving the warships to let out strange cries. The two warships were simply too fast. Behind them, an expert was chasing a warship. Only a high-grade god could chase a warship. A high-grade god is chasing a warship? All the experts in the capital raised their heads and watched in surprise and bewilderment. The speed and passion of the chase made them clench their fists and widen their eyes in excitement. A high-grade god is chasing a warship? Heavens! This is the first time I've seen such a chase. Why would a proud high-grade god chase a warship? This is the show of the year. Mo Feng's face was livid. As a high-grade god, he was extremely angry to be watched like a monkey. His anger surged as if he wanted to destroy everything. Now, he had no choice but to chase the warship in front of him. No matter how fast the warship moved, he would eventually catch up with it. He was getting closer. Mo Feng's eyes narrowed. He raised his hand, which almost touched the eaves of the warship. Many people below were chasing after the warship, staring at it and crying out in alarm. Sure enough, a high-grade god was fast. Luo Sanyang's face turned pale. He's going to catch up. She covered her red lips, her heart pounding. Once they caught up, given Mo Feng's fury, he would most likely kill her and Bu Fong on the spot. Although Bu Fong had the perishing pot, that trump card could only be used once. Don't worry, calm down. Suddenly Bu Fong's faint voice rang out. Sit tight, Bu Fong said. Luo Sanyang was taken aback. She glanced at Bu Fong. At this moment, Bu Fong looked confident, like an experienced driver. This made Luo Sanyang feel extremely at ease. Bu Fong's heart skipped a beat. Another gourmet array emerged. Gourmet array boost. The array was completed. Bu Fong focused his eyes and activated 2 arrays at the same time. Rumble. Behind the warship, a bright blue flame appeared. With a puff, it spurted out. The hull of the warship creaked as if it could not bear the weight, as if it would explode at any time. It seemed to be unable to withstand such a high speed. The sudden burst of speed made Luo Sanyang shrink into her chair. She clamped her legs tightly and let out a rhythmic cry. The image in the projection flashed. Boom! Mo Feng's pupils constricted. The next moment, he found that the warship had suddenly pulled away from him. Damn it! Mo Feng was furious. The people below all exclaimed. This warship is heaven-defying. I can't believe it accelerated at the last moment and shook off the high-grade god. This warship is interesting. Some boat racing enthusiasts were already whistling excitedly at this moment. They never thought that a comfortable array could shake off a high-grade god. The Divine Chef Temple. We've arrived. Luo Sanyang's face was pale, and her chest was churning. She could not stand it anymore. Bu Fong's face was calm. Suddenly, he raised his brows. He found that the warship's array had collapsed. What's going on? Bu Fong was also a little dazed. Luo Sanyang's face turned black. My warship! A rumbling sound rang out. Black smoke rose from the back of the battleship. Then, with a few toot-toot sounds, the battleship fell to the ground. With a thud, it smashed into the ground and rolled a few times, breaking into pieces and scattering in all directions. The whole audience was silent. Did this crash? Mo Feng's terrifying and scorching aura seemed to be able to incinerate the void. The terrifying pressure caused the hearts of everyone present to palpitate. A high-grade god is indeed terrifying. Mo Feng breathed like a dragon as he stared coldly at Bu Fong and Luo Sanyang, who had just walked out of the warship. Luo Sanyang crawled out of the warship with a pale face. She crawled out of the warship and fell to her knees, vomiting. It was her first time experiencing a boat race. Although it was exciting, her little heart could not bear it. Bu Fong's face was calm as he looked indifferently at Mo Feng in the sky. Not far away was the Divine Chef Temple. The Divine Chef Temple's skyscraper was right there. However, Mo Feng showed no fear. Hovering in midair, the wheel of law spun over his head, rumbling. Die! Mo Feng stared coldly at Bu Fong, his eyes brimming with killing intent. Is the dried pot delicious? Bu Fong twitched the corner of his mouth. Stinky chef, I'm going to cut you into 1,000 pieces. Mo Feng said coldly. That dried pot had blasted his body into tatters. This was simply a humiliation for him. Rumble. Like a blazing sun, he smashed down from the sky and smashed into the ground. Mo Feng burst forth with extreme speed and rushed toward Bu Fong. Die! Mo Feng growled. At this moment, everyone was as silent as cicadas in winter. This was a high-grade god. How could he attack in the Divine Dynasty? After vomiting for a while, Luo Sanyang felt much better. When she saw Mo Feng attack, she quickly spoke. Mo Feng, this is the territory of the divine chef temple. How dare you break the law? Luo Sanyang shouted with great confidence. Soon, however, her expression changed. That was because Mo Feng had completely ignored her. He only wanted to kill Bufang. The divine chef temple? Ridiculous. The Mo family is not afraid of the divine chef temple. Killing intent exploded in Mo Feng's eyes. He threw out a palm. The ground began to crack, and debris flew in all directions. It was a move that could destroy heaven and earth. Bufang stood where he was, his hair ruffled by the terrible airwaves, his pupils constricted. Mo Feng's speed was getting closer and closer. Luo Sanyang was a little anxious. She turned to look in the direction of the divine chef temple. Why haven't the experts of the divine chef temple made a move yet? Is the divine chef temple really afraid of the Mo family? It shouldn't be. Is it because we're not in the divine chef temple's territory yet? But we're only a few steps away from the divine chef temple. Why are the experts so stubborn? Luo Sanyang's face was extremely unsightly. She was standing very close to Bufang, and she could feel the feeling of death enveloping her. It looked like she was going to die with Bufang. In his rage, Mo Feng did not care that she was a member of the Luo family. Bufang stood where he was, his hands hanging by his waist. He looked indifferently at Mo Feng, who was approaching like a ferocious god. He breathed a sigh of relief. Bufang felt a little helpless. In his spirit sea, a divine power liquid drop hovered over the golden god of cooking's menu, spinning. The true form of his divine sense opened its eyes, reached out a hand, and crushed the last divine power liquid drop. However, Bufang did not feel the pinch. As long as the restaurant in the Divine Dynasty's capital opened for business, the system's temporary task reward would arrive. So, he decided to use the last drop. The divine power liquid drop crumbled. In an instant, streams of golden light surged. They flowed rapidly into Bufang's body. In just a flash, Bufang's mental force was restored to its peak, and so was his whole body. At the same time, Bufang's aura was rising at the same time. Rumble! Bufang opened his eyes, which shone with a golden light like the scorching sun. In the face of Mo Feng's killing means, the dragon bone kitchen knife appeared, and he slowly raised it. Then he slashed it down. Divine power, kitchen knife of affliction, Bufang said lightly. Rumble! The next moment countless knife lights emerged. In an instant Mo Feng's figure was devoured. Luo Sanyang, standing at Bufang's side, was dumbfounded. Didn't you say that dried pot is your strongest trump card? What the hell is with this knife? Where's the trust between people? You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.